Now what will it be? Death or exile?
What up, what up, what up? What up, though? Welcome to another episode of ENN, and this is a special edition. This is our spoiler talk of Wonder Woman 1984, released on December 25th. It's been out just about a week, and we are going to do a deep dive into every single thing about the movie. We're going to talk about the positives, the negatives. We're going to go through, like the plot. We're going to talk about the characters, acting performances. We're even going to go behind the scenes and give it context and talk about, the DCEU, comic book movies in general. What's good with Patty Jenkins? What's good with, the executives at Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder? And this, I believe, is going to be your comprehensive talk about Wonder Woman 1984. So if you haven't seen the film, please go watch our spoiler-free review, which is up on the channel right now. It's a brief one. It's about 6 minutes long. Watch the movie, then come back here, listen to this, and, dive in and chat with us. And joining me today are two of the baddest motherfuckers on the planet, my homies, my ride-or-die guys, Christian and Paul. Hey, Christian, welcome to the spoiler talk for Wonder Woman 1984. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Good to be here with both of you guys. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to what you're going to say about this, because you come at this from this perspective of being a very avid, comic book lover.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
we're all comic book lovers, but you really wear that as a badge of honor when you talk
Being
about
a nerd. That's right.
yeah, and it's really cool. I think you're gonna lend a very unique eye and angle to this
Thank you.
discussion. So I
I'll
can't
try.
wait to hear what you're gonna say. Paul, one of our superheroes on this journey, Mr. Positivity. How are you doing?
Good, Lupe. Good as always. Another difficult introduction to live up to. I'm not sure whether I'm one of the baddest or a superhero positivity, but either way, I think my family and my employer would be shocked to hear either of those things. So I'm just looking forward to talking about some Wonder Woman tonight. So
Absolutely.
let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So it's been a while since we've had a brand new blockbuster superhero movie to talk about, and Warner Media was happy to indulge us in our fantasies, and they granted our wish with Wonder Woman 1984. So the first thing that I want to hear from you guys is just give our audience context. We want to know, how did you feel about the first Wonder Woman movie? And then what were your expectations coming to this one? Like seeing the trailers, even hearing the name, just give us like a journey of all that. Let's start with Paul.
All right. Okay, so first Wonder Woman movie. As you guys know, I was late to discover Batman vs Superman. I didn't watch it in theaters. I was blown away by the Ultimate Edition when I finally saw it. That was my first exposure to that movie. So the next movie coming out was Wonder Woman, and I was excited to see that. And went on opening day in IMAX, and I got to say, I actually left a little bit disappointed by the first Wonder Woman. It was a little more comedic in nature, a little more romance. I didn't love Ares. It was fine. I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it lived up to the hype. I liked it, though. I thought it was good. I just didn't think it lived up to the hype, and it didn't live up to the standard of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman for me. At the time, I thought it was better than Suicide Squad. Now, with history, with more time to analyze both films, I actually like Suicide Squad better than the first Wonder Woman. But that's just a personal preference. It's a
Interesting.
more preference.
Even with knowing that Suicide Squad was, messed around with.
Yeah,
Although,
it's
Wonder Woman was?
The tone and the subject matter just grabbed me more with Suicide Squad. So, and I like Leto's Joker. I like the Batman cameo. So for me, Wonder Woman, the original Wonder Woman, was my number 4 movie in the DCU going in. So that's sort of my I guess where I was with the first Wonder Woman. Now, are you looking for my expectations going into this one, or we want
Yeah,
to?
yeah.
Okay.
Like,
So
what do you think? What do you think it was gonna be? When it was announced, and then when you started seeing trailers, how were you feeling going into your first, viewing?
yeah, so okay, so going into this one, um, I mean, most fresh in my memory was the look of the clips they'd shared. And they shared the opening Themyscira scene most recently, but prior to that they'd shared that god awful mall clip, which we'll get into, and that, I mean, that's a huge warning sign. Not to mention some of what we saw in the trailers had. The trailers prior to that were mixed, right? You saw elements, we talked about it on some of our episodes, where overall I liked what I was seeing, but there were serious warning signs with some of the cable work and
Mm-hmm.
just some of the look of certain scenes. So I went with very sort of, I guess, tepid expectations, having some faith in Patty Jenkins, having renewed faith by Snyder's enthusiasm and promotion of the film, but at the same time knowing he's a producer and probably has a financial interest in the success of this film. And, on the one hand, it's nice to see he and Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot promoting each other, and which was actually kind of rare, because one of my complaints about Patty prior to this is that she's had several opportunities to defend Snyder and always passed on them. I've
Mm-hmm.
never heard her say anything good about any of his films. The most, and even still, I've never heard her say anything good about any of his films. But I have heard her defend him as a person and as being supportive of her creative vision and giving her the freedom to do what she wanted to do. And that's, I think, the nicest thing she said about him. And even more recently, she said she's looking forward to seeing his Justice League. But I've still never heard her say anything positive about Man of Steel or BVS, two movies in the universe where she works. So I went in very mixed with tepid expectations, knowing that this film was conceived when they were trying to trying to undo the Snyderverse,
Mm-hmm.
wondering, we did hear stories of behind the scenes stuff, and at one point this was going to be the reboot that rebooted the franchise, and then we heard
Mm-hmm.
that they were doing major changes to maybe de-Johns this film or maybe extra Johns this film. So I didn't really know what to expect, but I went in hoping for the best but expecting the worst, and I guess I'll leave it to that and pass it on to you guys. What were your thoughts on the original and going into this one?
Well, for me, Wonder Woman 1 was not in my top 5 favorite comic book movies of all time, but it's in the upper echelon for me. I thought Gal's performance, even going back into BVS, was great. And I thought it carried over into Wonder Woman 1. And even though it might not be top 5 for me personally in my rankings, it does have one of the greatest scenes in comic book movie history to me. In the No Man's Land scene is like the scene where you see that she's truly starting to believe who she is, what she's capable of doing, that she has something to fight for, that humankind is something that deserves her to rescue it. And I just think that there's so much about that scene that's so powerful. These humans, these mortals, giving up their lives too to help her. There was just so much about that I thought was done really well. And I thought that a lot of things in that movie was done tastefully as well. Like her relationship and the night that she spent with Steve was done, I thought, very tastefully. That journey she had from a naive young woman, but a young god, having her eyes open to the evil in the world, what needs to be sacrificed for her to be a hero, starting that journey to the character that we saw talking to Bruce Wayne at the end of BVS. So everything about that I actually really liked. So count me as one person that really enjoyed Wonder Woman 1, and I've watched it multiple times since it's come out, and I have it on Blu-ray, and it's a comic book movie that I truly enjoy. Separated itself from the comic book mythos a couple of times, but I thought that the Themyscira stuff especially was done really well. And that was what I was expecting when reading a comic book and then watching that. It was like, wow, that was like Themyscira. It came to life. And the expectations going into this, I would say that, you guys know from me being on the pod, I'm not going to change I'm not going to, change history. I was looking forward to this movie, definitely. To your point, Paul, no offense to Snyder or any of his fans, whether he was put behind it, pushing it, giving his opinion, I really don't care. That doesn't matter to me one way or another. If he hated it or he loved it, good for him. But the trailers clearly showed a different tone. And the 80s thing was very real. We all joked around about it, and they were like, hey, 80s, right? It was screaming 80s the entire time. We knew, and I think I knew, of course, that it was going to be different than the Snyderverse. But from a comic perspective, it had me intrigued. The Golden Eagle armor, the reveal on that, I was like, oh, hot shit, that was awesome. I really liked the way that looked. When Sheeta's CGI looked a little better in the trailers when they revamped it a little bit and they tweaked it. Really happy about that. But as you and I and Lupe talked, there were warning signs. There were warning signs about how ultra bright it was. That I was a child of the 80s and it did not look like that. What the hell? It did not look like that. So I was kind of worried about that going in. So my expectations changed a little as I watched the trailers, and then we saw it. I tried to stay away from the clips and everything. We saw what people were saying about it. I wasn't as excited, but I have to admit my excitement was still fairly high when I started the movie and I did watch the opening scene. I was like, I think I really want to enjoy this movie. And then we'll talk about what happened when we actually watched it. But my expectations going in, I really did want to like this movie and really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, the first Wonder Woman movie. I mean, you guys know how much I love Man of Steel, and I feel it is a masterpiece. It's a flawless. Flawless. Like, I don't look at that movie and say, I would have changed this. There's absolutely nothing, and it went above and beyond my expectations. It has such poignant, emotional scenes, and then you have such crazy, bombastic action, and this all on a tapestry of like beautiful, images and Hans Zimmer's score and powerful acting performances. And I feel like for the first Wonder Woman movie, the first act does the exact same thing. That Themyscira like act is just, it's mind blowing how perfect it is. The dialogue, the action, the costumes, the imagery. I mean, when Hippolyta is telling Diana, they do not deserve you, and she's saying, if I stay, who will I be? Stuff like that. And then the second act comes along, and I think the second act is also fantastic. It starts to get a bit comedic, and there's some things that are like, it starts to lose a little bit of that weight that it had in the first. But I still say, like, for me, the first act is like a 10 out of 10. The second act to me is a 9 out of 10. Like, I rate it that highly. But then it starts to show chinks in the armor. The third act to me is like a 3 or a 2 or a 0 out of 10. I absolutely hate the third act. And obviously we came to find out that it was rewritten and rejigged after the whole Batman v Superman backlash, when they were trying to make everything lighter and more hopeful and more heroic. So you ended up with a lot of like preaching and a lot of monologuing and talking about feelings and how much she loves love and people deserve this, and it just derailed the entire film. Didn't rhyme with the rest of the reason that it had set up in the first and second acts. So it's a movie that I watch every once in a while, and it's just such a bitter sweet pill to swallow, because the first two acts are so perfect, but then the last one is so imperfect. And anyone who knows the background knows that Zack Snyder was a heavy influence on that film. As a matter of fact, those first two acts, it's almost as if it's Zack Snyder directing, but Patty Jenkins is his analog. Like, she's just a stand-in for him. Because every single thing, the casting of the character, Patty Jenkins said she would never have cast Gal Gadot. The interpretation of the character as more mythological and Grecian and focusing more on the god aspect of the character is Zack Snyder. Focusing on her as this warrior in the style of 300 Spartans and having, a clan of a warrior tribe is Zack Snyder. Even the fact that recently the Connie Nielsen, who plays Hippolyta, she was talking about how, all the Amazon actresses actually they went to a camp and they all trained together to put on muscle, and it made them, feel like a team, and they bonded, through sweating and through putting their body through all these rigors. It felt like, a group, and that chemistry translated. That was done by Zack Snyder's team, who does, all that stuff, and did it for them on 300. So I can go on and on about how this is a film that basically was made by Zack Snyder. The fighting style, everything, when you see it, it's a Zack Snyder film. That's why the first couple acts rhyme so well with Man of Steel. So I'm saying, what I'm saying is, in terms of the way the third act changes, and we see that it's more of this new thing that Jeff Johns, who became the president of DC, was trying to do, and Patty Jenkins also going along with it. And then during the press tour, she was promoted in and talking about all these changes. I'm setting up that going into the next Wonder Woman, I had already started to have my doubts about Patty Jenkins because of what happened in that third act. Couple that with the fact that coming into Wonder Woman 1984, Patty Jenkins completely removed, fired, excised, disinvited, uninvited, ignored everyone from Zack Snyder's team that worked on the first movie, including Zack Snyder as a storyteller, because he has story credit on the first one. He just doesn't have screenplay credit. And basically the difference between story credit and screenplay credit, if you don't mind me indulging in this, is that because there's been a little bit of confusion, because I've had some discussions with people online, is that the story is basically just a plot, and you can map out where the character goes beat for beat. But the script or the screenplay infuses dialogues, scene. It is so much more detailed. So for example, I can tell you that I have a story, and it's about a woman who loses her son, and then she goes to this country, she meets this other man, and they have a child, and that child is born, and the child does this and that and that and that and that, all the way up to the end. That's the story. But then a script or a screenplay starts to give you like this, all the dialogue, every single thing they say, how they move, where they sit. So Zack Snyder, basically every single beat of the film was his. He just didn't have time, obviously, since the director doing other things, to write a screenplay for the whole thing. But the involvement is very, very important because it sets up how I felt about Wonder Woman 1984. So I wasn't very enthused coming in, but then I started to see the first thing we saw some like teaser images, and they looked horrible. The Wonder Woman suit was a lot brighter. We also saw that she was doing campy stuff like holding a man upside down. It was so bad that people who are stans were saying, "Oh, this is not the movie. This is just it's like a commercial for like an ad. It's like ad product placement," because she was winking at the camera, and everybody's like, "It can't be." And I was laughing because I knew it was. But coming in, my expectations were pretty low. I thought it wasn't going to be good. But then at the same time, Pat Jenkins is a person who made, at the end of the day, she directed the first Wonder Woman. You know, it's kind of like Christopher Nolan set up Man of Steel for Zack Snyder, but it was Zack Snyder that directed it. You know, at the end of the day, it was her. So I said, at least it's going to be good or passable, or I can watch it for whatever it is. And then the trailers came out. I think she's very good in terms of how she color grades and shooting on film, how grainy it is. I do like her images. I just do. And she brought over the same sort of imagery or image quality from the first film to this one. So, and with the Snyder Cut coming out in a couple of months, I said, you know what? I'm going to watch this for what it is. It's going to be her take. It cannot be too far off from the first Wonder Woman movie since she directed that one. And so I'll just, enjoy it for what it is. Like I enjoyed Birds of Prey for what it was, but I was in for a surprise. And now we're going to go into how we felt about Wonder Woman 1984. So I want to hear your overall thoughts, but let's break it down into two sections. So let's start with what you thought was positive from Wonder Woman 1984. And let's start with Christian.
For me, the biggest positive to me was, and where I was actually like kind of glued to the screen and watching it and found myself more emotionally involved, was anything that happened between Diana and Steve. To me, that was a strong point for the movie. I think Pine and Godot have fantastic chemistry together. I've become a major Chris Pine fan recently. I saw Outlaw King on Netflix and a couple of other smaller movies that he was in, and I actually really like the guy. So I found myself drawn to them. And another positive to me, we talked about this on the pod a couple of episodes ago. I was pleasantly surprised by Kristen Wiig as Barbara Minerva Cheetah, because like I was worried, and it happened at the beginning when they first introduced her. She was just Kristen Wiig being Kristen Wiig. Like that's it. It was just awkward Target girl from Saturday Night Live. That's like who she was. And that I was like, oh, here we go. She's just going to be that character throughout the whole movie. She's going to be awkward, nerdy, bumbling, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be it. And that's who she is in Ghostbusters. That's who she is in Bridesmaids. That's who she is everywhere. And it didn't happen that way. I actually felt that there was a shift from her halfway through the movie. I really liked her take. As ridiculous as a lot of it was, I liked it. I actually really appreciated it. And she got closer to the Barbara Minerva from the comics, at least certain iterations of her, I should say, than I expected her to. So those are the two big things that I took away as positives. I felt just from, taking my mind from seeing what's on the pages and bringing them to the big screen, there were a couple of scenes that were very well done. That opening scene, Themyscira, freaking awesome. That was awesome. We can break that down later when we break down the act. I thought that was done really well. I thought that her reveal, even as stupidly as, it was just sitting in basically a museum somewhere, but the reveal in the Golden Eagle armor and she opens it up in all her glory, I was like, that's badass. Loved it. Thought it was great. I thought that was done really well. And it wasn't done with super amounts of color. I know it was nighttime, but it wasn't done where, she just had lightning bolts coming out of her sides and everything. I thought it was done very well. And I even like the fact that they brought Steve back. I know that that's a common movie trope and it's a big comic book thing, but that guy's returned 50 times in the stories and there's thousands of comic book stories where he comes back. And I thought they could have done something like it was silly, but they could have done something really bad where they brought him back and he's killed off again and there's a possibility of him coming back again. No, he really, he's only Chris Pine because she's seeing him as Chris Pine. And I thought that was a good way to do it because it would have taken the audience out of it completely if Handsome Dude was trying to act as Chris Pine the entire time. So she doesn't care what his body looks like necessarily. She's just seeing him as Chris, or Steve, I should say. She's seeing him as Steve Trevor. We can get into the ramifications of that later, But
I was going to say poor choice of words.
Using that poor guy's body, if you will. But I thought it was
definitely didn't care.
Definitely didn't care. It was an interesting choice that I think could have taken everybody out of it if they went a different direction. But I think it was with him finally being put to rest, if you will, at the end of that. Hopefully that means no more Steve Trevor. I'm fine. It's time for him to be gone. No more Steve Trevor. She doesn't need Steve Trevor in order to be Wonder Woman. So I think it's important that she put that aside and it's over. So to me, those were the positives that I took away from it. And of course, unfortunately, there's negatives we'll get into. But yeah, those are the things I like the most about the movie.
For me, I'd say I agree with a lot of things you said, apart from the Steve Trevor returning thing. And we'll get into that later. Both Steve Trevor returning and the way, the reason, everything. I don't see that as a positive. I might not see it as a negative, but I just don't see it as one of the things I was like, oh yeah, that was awesome. I think I like Hans Zimmer's score. I didn't think it was his greatest work ever. I'm never going to listen to it again, but I could tell that, sometimes you're watching a movie and you can be like, oh, the music is good. And when I notice the music is good, I check off that box. Okay, good score. Actually had some really nice themes that worked. Especially in the Themyscira scene, there was this one of like an Amazonian theme of chanting, and it was it felt very tribal and very appropriate for the this warring warrior tribe. Also, he did a couple sort of tweaks to the classic, hard rock, heavy metal Wonder Woman theme, and infused it into some other scenes, like the way they normally do it, in James Bond movies,
right?
Where that classic theme, they tweak it depending on the location he is or the mood. He did that, and I really appreciated that. Zimmer he's something else.
I'm with you. It was sad that the middle, sorry to interrupt you, was so generic in the score. I felt it did get better at the end, but the middle of the movie was just very
it's not his greatest score. I don't think it's his greatest score. It's not something I'm ever going to listen to again, but it's definitely better than your standard generic sort of stuff that I've seen a lot of other people do. It just I understand what you mean. Not every single thing was. I'm never going to listen to it again. Yeah, but I thought at least it was good. I thought that the acting performances were very good. I think Gal Gadot has improved greatly as an actress, even when she's being given terrible material to 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 deal with. She really commits. Pedro Pascal's looking at this dude like, "Aren't you tired? Like, what the this dude's energy levels? He was bouncing off the walls. Like, he really committed to the role, and I feel like it was a really hammy role in which it was chewing scenery, but something about it made it work. And it's also partly because of what the character is, right? The character is a showman, right? Those kind of like really loud, obnoxious showmen that just suck all the energy out of the room. So it was quite appropriate for that level of over the topness. The acting performance by him, I think, was good. We'll go into other negatives, so I'm not going to say anything now, but I thought his acting was good. Also, I agree with you on Barbara Minerva. The only thing that I'll say about Kristen Wiig's performance is that I feared is, okay, so coming in, me and you were both the same. We both didn't think it was a good choice to cast her because we know Cheetah as this feral, savage, feline, ultra powerful. Like, in terms of like power, she's ranked. She's no slouch to Wonder Woman.
No.
Like, they can both go toe to toe in terms of being confident, and I just never saw that from Kristen Wiig. So I feel like, obviously, the character goes through three phases: nerd, confident woman, then savage beast. I was very impressed with how she pulled off the confident woman. I didn't think she was going to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And so basically, 2/3 of the job she did very well. In terms of the savage beast, I never, even though she was in so much makeup and prosthetics and all that stuff, I still just never felt that essence, that thing. And I feel like, in terms of her character evolution, for this movie, it could work. For other movies, it wouldn't work so well. Because in other movies that are not origin stories, you're going to be focusing more on the other. If she's doing a transformation between being a human to a cheetah, that's the best chance you have. But if she's fully a cheetah, then you're going to be stuck with Kristen Wiig as the cheetah character. And I do not think she has that in her well enough. If you're doing a transition between a confident woman who's able to, change into cheetah, whatever type of story you want to do that does that, although they don't do that in comics or even animation, then she would do well with the confident woman than not. If you understand what I'm saying in terms of how much screen time the character is getting. So I think I would still have preferred that someone like, my favorite choice was Charlize Theron, for Charlize Theron to have been Cheetah, because Charlize Theron would obviously nail the confident woman. That's like her default. And then the savage, like Cheetah, she will blow the doors off. But I can see Kristen Wiig doing the nerd, the clumsy nerd, better than someone like Charlize Theron. So you have those things to think about.
Might be why Charlize, they didn't ask her too, because she's like the go-to woman.
Yep. and also they Charlize said something like during that actually the role for Hippolyta was first tendered to her, but
that's right.
She didn't think that the role was worthy of her time. That it wasn't like, yeah, exactly. but it's all. But you know what? Where Patty could have made it up to her was for the cheetah role. But then the entire tone of this movie, which is something that we'll get into, may not have fit with her style of acting, although she's done comedies. So anyway, those are what I think the positives are, and those are the only positives I think are in the film. So Paul, what did you enjoy about Wonder Woman 1984?
Yeah, okay. Well, without going into too much detail, because you guys have covered it pretty thoroughly. Likewise, I thought the individual acting performances were great from all four of them, to be quite honest. Given the tone of the film, I was okay with Kristen Wiig's performance, and like you say, Pedro Pascal brought a ton of energy, really committed to the role. And in isolation, I might not have enjoyed those performances as much as I did as part of the whole, because it did work with what they were going for in this film, right? The feel of it, it fit to me, at least. It's not necessarily what I prefer, but it fit with what the director was going for. So I thought they really carried the film, those 4 performances, because there were weaknesses elsewhere to be found in this film, but I thought that was what was compelling. And as Christian pointed out, particularly the continued chemistry between Gal Gadot's Diana and Chris Pine's Steve Trevor. It's compelling, right? It's easy to watch. They're likable,
Right.
and enjoyable, right? So that was the first and most obvious pro to me. Secondly, as Lupe, you pointed out, some of the scenes are really filmed beautifully. It really feels like a big budget production in a lot of those scenes. There are definitely flaws with the look and the VFX and the cable work, which we'll get to, but there's a sort of a grand feel to some of those scenes that really does feel cinematic. The Themyscira scene being one. Elements of the convoy chase I really enjoyed. I mean, there were some cringe in that scene too, but there was a lot of elements of that scene I liked. The invisible jet was a beautifully shot scene. I liked the fight scene with the Golden Eagle armor and Cheetah. So that to me, it looked good, I thought, for the most part, minus some obvious things which we'll get to. I guess one thing I should qualify here is I didn't expect this to fit with the Snyderverse. So I went in really trying to look at this as its own thing. I held out a little bit of hope in the back of my head that this was going to fit with the movies I love, but really knowing it wasn't. And
Right.
my daughter was very excited about this one. She was excited about the Golden Eagle armor. She's a little older now. She's 9. Then she, is a little older now than she was when the first Wonder Woman came out. This is sort of hitting her at the right time. So she was fired up for this. So I went into this watching this as much for her as I did for myself. And with that comes a different lens that you watch these films, right? So I was prepared to watch this thing the same way I watch a Disney princess movie with her. And that is kind of what you get at the core of this movie. This is a movie full of color, full of magical conveniences, full of moral preaching, and a happy ending, right? So you're getting a Disney movie basically with a superhero skin on it, maybe geared to a slightly older audience, but at its core, this is a Disney princess movie. And watching that with her and seeing how much she enjoyed this film was a positive for me, because she really did enjoy this film. And in fact, she gets upset when she hears me saying anything negative about it. Like she's really quite enamored with it. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so despite the ridiculousness of the plot, which even my daughter was able to, catch on to and question certain things, overall, I found this movie entertaining. It was engaging. I enjoyed the pacing of it. I didn't spend time checking my watch. The 2.5 hours flew by. We enjoyed it beginning to end. There were certain eye-rolling moments, but overall, it was an enjoyable experience. I was entertained, and at the end of the day, that's kind of what I look for in movies is did it entertain me? So that's a positive. A couple other little things I'd point out. I know the Lasso has gotten a lot of flack. I actually liked what they did with the Lasso. I liked some of the stuff with it. It didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, and I did not miss the sword and shield in the context of this film. I think it would have actually looked ridiculous to have the sword and the shield in running around Washington, right? I don't think it would have served
I don't
the purpose.
believe I'm hearing you say this.
Yeah, no, I was never a big, I was never like out there screaming about the sword and the shield. I was the tone that I was more concerned about. But in the context of this film, I didn't think the sword and shield were necessary, and I liked what they did with the Lasso. So there was that. And then lastly, with regards to the score, as you pointed out, this wasn't to me one of Zimmer's most memorable scores, but there was a couple of scenes where it really worked for me. Primarily the Themyscira at the beginning, and then her first flight. I really liked the way the score worked in that scene. And to be honest, I wish they would have used that a little more. And there's another particular scene where I wish they might have used that one instead of something else. And I actually didn't mind the way they sort of reused the Wonder Woman theme. I thought it was fine. I thought that was good. So overall, score was good. Not the greatest thing I've ever heard. Really liked it in a couple scenes. So that's my pros. I guess.
You can go right into your cons.
My cons? Okay.
Yeah, you're right there. So go for it.
All right, let's do it. So cons. Number 1, tone. Tone, the camp. It's just not for me. I mean, it worked within the context of the film. If that's what you're into, it's not really what I'm into. So again, I was able to enjoy this because I was enjoying it with my daughter. If I was watching this by myself as a movie from a franchise that I was invested in, I would not have enjoyed this tone, especially the way this movie started off. I mean, it could not have started any worse with the Themyscira scene rolling into saving that jogger with the two goofball in the Trans Am driving around and the jogger in the 80s look, and then going straight into the mall scene with the ridiculous overacting and campiness and physical comedy of that scene. And the saving children, like just checking the boxes off of the same kind of crap they tried to shoehorn into Justice League. So that was an awful way to start the film. But then once we got through that mall scene, and then we switched back to Diana's apartment, I thought it picked up from there, and I thought I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it significantly more after that. And but I thought the tone was bad, and especially at the beginning, it was just a really awful way to start it. And it was cartoonish, right? Again, like with the physical comedy, exaggerated acting, and even like Kristen Wiig, when they first introduced her, dropping her papers all over the floor. Even my daughter said, that's just like Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. and it was the exact same thing, right? And then that's one of the things I hated most about that movie was Jamie Foxx's goofy, over-the-top Max, and then Paul Giamatti's ridiculous Rhino. And I even got Paul Giamatti vibes from those two goofballs in the Trans Am, like the over-the-top, like acting. It just didn't work for me at all. The Donner Superman and Linda Carter Wonder Woman tributes didn't work. Like when she's doing her first flight and she's doing the one fist back, one arm out front. I mean, it was cringe, right? It was. I should like that scene for the most part, but that was cheese. And then the throwing of the tiara nonsense. I mean, that was ridiculous. So
that's
so
like
that
the Superman foil S, bro. That's
yeah, it was terrible. I mean, that just didn't work at all, right? And then the big one, right? I mean, these are the ones that's going to hit. Well, I mean, they're all big, but the nonsensical story. I mean, it was entirely reliant on magical convenience, and it's relying on the audience to go to great lengths to suspend disbelief and just accept rather than ask questions. And you can ask questions, but just don't ask too deep or don't think too hard, right? Just kind of go with it. And certain things, just better not to ask. I mean, again, because I'm watching this as a kid's movie in the same way I'd watch a Disney princess movie like a Frozen where magic is the answer to everything. I can accept it, but is it what I want from a film? For myself? Probably not, right? Now we get on to the VFX, right? There was some atrocious green screen. I mean, when she's running head on or when she's flying. I mean, there's a few of these scenes, or when people are leaping sometimes or getting kicked. I'm kind of convoluting green screen and cable work here, which are both problems in this. The green screen looks so bad, it's like they were trying to be bad as an homage to the 80s. And I'm still not convinced they weren't trying to be bad. And the cable work, I mean, we could see that right from the trailers. It was terrible. The cable work was atrocious. And I don't think that was intentional. I think it was just bad. So that was a letdown. I don't know if there's anything more to say about that. I guess the one thing I'd say about the VFX, and oh my God, it's bad, is in that caravan convoy scene that I said I liked, when she swoops down, Steve Trevor launches the missile, she catches it with the lasso, and then takes a ride until she lassos the tower, and then swoops down to grab the two kids. The second kid on the outside of her arm, her hand hits him flat in the back flat in the back. Fingers don't even close. Her hand doesn't wrap around him. Her fingers don't close on his clothing. She just velcros to him and scoops him right off the. It was absurd, utterly absurd. It takes you out of the scene. And again, why were these kids there? Because someone told them you have to show her saving kids. At the end of this whole scene, oh look, we got 4 kids playing soccer in the street. We better save some kids, right? You just didn't need to have the kids there at all. It's solely there to show heroes being heroes. That's the classic BS they tried to shove into Justice League. So there's that. I didn't think. Now here's one that I think is going to get a mixed reaction, but I think probably from most of the people that listen to us, Beautiful Lie didn't work for me. That felt to me like they shoehorned that in to throw Snyder fans a bone at the last minute, and it felt like a fan made. It felt fan made. It literally felt fan made. It didn't fit. That's the scene where I would have rather seen them use that same music from her first flight. I think that could have fit there. Now I'm no expert on scoring film, but at least that was unique to this film, and it was one of the scenes where I thought it was really beautiful and impactful. And Beautiful Lie, I'm like, oh God, it's a shoehorned in to give Snyder fans a bone for showing up. And then of course the pacing of that scene, that whole final monologue with the moral preaching, it was just slow and wordy and laid it on so thick with the truth. And I think I didn't actually have a problem with the lack of action. I actually liked the fact that she had a speech, but they beat you over the head with it. It needed to be more concise. It needed to get to the point quicker.
A little heavy-handed.
Yeah, it was just very heavy-handed and repetitive to like really beat it home. In case you didn't get it, here we're gonna really beat it home and say truth about 8 more times just in case. So that was rough. But again, watching it as a princess movie with a different lens, I guess I could tolerate it, right? It didn't ruin the movie for me. And then, of course, like going back to the story, the whole idea about, first of all, the wishes going out to everyone, and then everyone has to renounce their wish. I'm still not sure. Did everyone have to renounce their wish? Did it matter? Did it just have to be Max Lord that renounced his wish? Or did everyone that ever made a wish also have to renounce that wish, even if their wish was something incredibly virtuous? And does it matter? At that point, does anyone even care? Because the story is so ridiculous that you just kind of have to
just
accept
shrug.
it, right?
Yeah.
You just say, whatever, it's fun. Let it go, right? So
you just say, please end. Just
well, I know what you're getting to, so I'm not going to give you a hard time. Just get it done, right? Just get it done. And lastly, I feel that this totally undermines her character in BVS. Like it's alternate universe from BVS to me. So that was a con. I didn't expect this to be tight with BVS, but I feel like it was just alternate universe from BVS altogether for me. So I didn't like that because it does not fit in the continuity of BVS at all, including her power set and the fact that people saw her, unless we're to believe that renouncing wishes also eliminates people's memories. I don't know, whatever. Again, you just accept it. And that's one of those ones where I tell myself, at least we're getting Zack Snyder's Justice League, so just let this be what it is. And with that, I've probably gone on longer than I intended to, but I will pass it on to you guys and let me know what you think about the cons of this one.
Christian, do you have any new cons? Because Paul pretty much gave us a pretty good list. Do you have anything new to add to the cons of this movie?
I'll keep it pretty short. He definitely went through a bunch of points there, so there's really no reason for me to repeat all of them. I think for me, Maxwell Lord, we'll talk about him in the character section in a minute, just a bastardization of his comic counterpart, and that pissed me off to no end. Acting was great, like Paul said, horrible character, and I'm really angry with what they did with him. I'm mad at the bastardization of the Golden Eagle armor and its purpose as well. That pissed me off too. Too hard into the 80s. I mean, Jesus Christ! It just every 5 seconds. The 80s were not like that. I think I'll say this and I'll throw it to you, Lupe. My main negative is, for me, the movie wasn't bad enough nor good enough to deserve the war that I'm seeing online. I didn't love it nor hate it enough. So ultimately it's forgettable. And that's my problem with the movie. Wonder Woman 1, while maybe not my favorite, had these unforgettable moments that I still have in my mind with music and everything. And where this movie isn't nowhere near as good as my personal favorites like Logan, Winter Soldier, Dark Knight, and it's nowhere near as bad as Batman and Robin or Iron Man 3 or Captain Marvel. It's just a mid-range, pick the MCU if you will, because there's 20 of them or whatever. It's just a mid-range one of those movies that ultimately gets thrown into the pile. And I don't know if I want to rewatch it. I'm probably going to rewatch it again eventually. I will. I think I will. But I don't care enough about it. And that, to me, is the biggest negative about this movie. I wanted to care, and I kind of don't. So that's what we'll leave it with.
Yeah.
You know what? I was just going to jump in. Oh, sorry, Luke, I was just going to jump in and say I actually do want to rewatch this. I enjoyed it enough that I would rewatch it, and I do want to see if there's something I missed. So despite seeing negative, I actually did care a little bit, and there were certain scenes I enjoyed. So I'll leave it with that and pass it on to Lupe.
Oh, definitely enjoyable. Definitely enjoyable. It's just that's my problem. I'm very meh over it, and I don't like that. So
for
sorry,
me,
go ahead.
I must have had a different experience from you guys, because I don't feel this movie's meh. I don't feel it's enjoyable. By the end of Wonder Woman 1984, I absolutely, with the passion of 1,000 burning suns,
Extreme prejudice.
Hated. I'm talking like, and I'm telling you, I started this movie actually liking it. I entered with optimism. The Themyscira scene was uplifting to my soul, and this is gonna be good. And from there, it was downhill and downhill, and it just go worse and stupider and dumber and more pandering and more reliant on nostalgia, more illogical, more plot contrivances and holes. And by the time that that's damn stupid nostalgia pandering rubbish end credit scene came in, I was like, I hate this movie. And this is the thing about film when we talk about film. You have to be able to discern between what is subjective criticism, like, this is not my style, this is not what I like, and what is objective. And I can confidently say, and I will not back down from this, Wonder Woman 1984 is an objectively bad movie. Objectively. Whether you enjoyed it or you didn't is up to you. There are bad movies I enjoy, for example, like Mortal Kombat from the 90s, some of the Fast and Furious movies. But Wonder Woman 1984 is without a doubt an objectively bad movie, and I will tell you why.
Oh, I enjoy a lot of shit movies. I agree.
The plot is entirely illogical. It breaks several and uncountable amounts of times once you pass it through any sort of scrutiny. It sets up rules that it doesn't adhere to. It skips over things just to jump to places. Also, this movie has a huge problem with Deus Ex Machina. And it's something that I think that we need to discuss a little bit for our audience so you guys understand. So what's Deus Ex Machina? It didn't start out as something bad. It literally translates from Latin to from the machine, a god. And during the days when, all they had in terms of, storytelling performances were plays, they would have a machine. So, at the scene where the hero or the band of heroes are almost dead, maybe during a war, and then a god descends and saves them just when they thought that, there was nothing that could be done, a machine would literally, send down an actor.
It's like a peer. Yeah.
Exactly. An actor that plays a god. It will swoop down from a machine. So that's Deus Ex Machina. A point in a movie or story where the characters come up against a problem that's going to destroy everything and they can't solve it. And like magic, a god or something that's like a god just saves them. It's not necessarily a bad thing. For example, if you remember Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf the White comes and saves them, that is classic Deus Ex Machina. But where it becomes a problem in storytelling is when you have lazy, bad story writers. They come up against a problem, they can't solve the problem, so magically, illogically, something just happens and it just solves it. And this movie is riddled with that problem. That fucking magic lasso, if I see that shit, I will snatch it from Wonder Woman and throw it into the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean.
It can make you a cappuccino if you need it to.
It could do every and any fucking thing. You want to deflect bullets? Magic lasso. Oh, I'm going to give you a vision. Magic lasso. Swing like Spider-Man. Magic lasso. I want to swing from clouds. Magic lasso. Swing on lightning. Magic lasso. Swing on air. Magic lasso. Transmit like a fucking antenna to the entire world. Magic lasso. Any and everything. I got so fucking tired of that magic lasso and so annoyed at the fact that it was just a crutch for whatever point they wanted to jump from to in the story. It was so annoying. Apart from that, the invisible jet. That's another time where, they wanted the jet to be invisible, or they wanted to, sneak that in. They just said, all we'll just say is that she had practiced it before in a teacup, but she made it disappear. So now she can do it. Deus Ex Machina. Horrible script writing problem. For example, the golden armor. They wanted the golden armor in there, and they just say, we'll just say that, she found it because a hero something. Just the script it's just like shoddy, lazy writing. And then the over-reliance on nostalgia. Nostalgia is not necessarily a bad thing if you can harness it in a very powerful and beautiful way. But when you rely on it so much, it shows that you do not have fresh ideas. You're not bringing anything new to the table. And the ideas that you have, you're using people's emotional attachment to something in the past to manipulate them into liking what you have. So, for example, Paul talked about The Beautiful Lie. That's an instance of Patty Jenkins trying to use nostalgia to pander to an audience. All the homages to Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, to Richard Donner's Superman, to 1980s movies, to Indiana Jones, all that nostalgic pandering. Like even when Wonder Woman was flying, it was so much like the way Richard Donner's Superman like flew, very floaty, having no actual like power or force. Even the posture with which she flies, that cheesy one hand on the side, sort of like floaty, is not even something that any modern flying hero actually really does. If you see like Henry Cavill's Superman flies with like two fists. I'm not saying that she needed to copy Henry Cavill's Superman. For example, like Thor with his hammer, when he propels himself and flies, one hand is completely down, one is with the, if she flew and she did it her own way, it would be different, but it was so obviously pandering again. And then the rescuing cats from trees, essentially, by saving fallen brides. And I can go on and on about how this is an objective. And then not even to talk about the VFX problems as Paul went into. This is an objectively bad movie. I don't care whether you enjoyed it or not. That's good. It's good you enjoyed it. Be cool with that. But this is a bad movie, and it got worse from the beginning. And by the time I saw Linda Carter in the end, and she was trying to do nostalgic pandering again, I was just like, I really hate this movie. Like, this is just, it's anti-art. And I've ranted for too long. And since we don't have too much time going on, what we're going to do is that we're just going to talk about like the entire movie, just briefly. We're not going to go into details, but we're going to talk about different things that sort of like struck us during the movie. So we've talked about the first act in Themyscira and what we thought of it. We also talked about the mall scene, and Paul did a good job of talking about how the different characters and how campy it was. What do you guys think of like the mall scene?
It's very Superman 3-esque.
Yeah.
It's the same. I don't need to go hard on this, and I don't want to take up a lot of time. It's you guys, I think, know how I feel about Stranger Things. That's one of those things that like I enjoy, but sometimes I think it's overdone. And Stranger Things goes really hard on its 1980s, especially the third season. It's like, come on, guys. Again, I repeat, I was a child of the 80s. It wasn't like that. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They have this strange idealized version of what they think the 80s are lately, and they want to slam it down our throats so much. And it harkened too much back to that. And I didn't. Did I laugh at it? Did I smile? Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that didn't happen. Sure, I did. I smiled at it, and I smiled at the little girl and everything. Yeah, okay, it's cool. But it just was like, why was it so overdone? That was my problem. It was just overdone. It was done in such a way to be like, hey, like in case you didn't know, hey, and it's like, and I think it goes back to your pandering thing, just saying, you guys blast me for the MCU. The MCU doesn't do that a lot anymore. Like, it's come on. Like, they do it in Captain Marvel. I know they do. There's movies they do it in, but it's like, come on. Like, it didn't need to be like that, I felt. So yeah, no reason for me to go hard on that. It didn't take me out of the movie like crazy, but I think it's cemented in my mind when I was like, crap, there are my fears about the 80s, and it's going to be there for the whole movie. I just need to accept it and move on. That's it.
I thought this scene, and I won't go into it at length again because I already talked about it, but this scene in particular was overacted in a way that the rest of the movie wasn't. Like this, the rest of the movie had camp, but this took it to another level.
It felt a little out
like
of place, right?
With that one guy, the Clint Eastwood lookalike, screaming "No!" like, and like the the exaggerated body motions, right down to the spinning through the drum. Like the physical comedy of coming through the drum and spinning like it was absurd, and it really did feel like a commercial. Like it felt like a comedic commercial they would have made to tie into the movie. Why it was in here, I don't know. I mean, they had to steal the artifact, but God, what a terrible way to start the movie. it was just ridiculous, right? It didn't need to be in there. And then, of course, the tiara throw at the end after the cameras already filmed her to knock the cameras out. What, you know?
It's the foil S,
What?
bro. It's the
Yeah.
foil S. It's what they have to do.
That'll delete the VHS while you're at it, or the beta, or whatever they recorded.
like, pow, pow.
Oh,
Yes, that will
gosh.
delete it. That will delete
Yep.
the footage. Oh my
Brutal.
goodness. I agree with you guys. There's no need to, it just, like, as you guys said, if it just felt out of place and it felt awkward, it so bad on every single level. And then you had the whole winking to the camera, which is like, that's usually a metaphor, like it doesn't like a wink to the camera, but she literally, if you didn't know that they were winking to the camera, she literally winked to the camera.
Yeah.
And then, kid smiles, and it's just, that's part of the stuff that I see is just
Being a
pander.
hero to children.
Yeah, exactly.
It's checking boxes off the list. Heroes being heroes and being admired by children.
It was as if Patty Jenkins had been reading from the Bible of Devin Faraci and all the film Twitter blogger man-child rubbish people. Anyway, so after the scene, we get into Barbara Minerva meeting Diana and Diana's loneliness and all that kind of stuff, showing Diana in her natural element, her civilian life, looking like Superfly glamorous with the big hair and all that stuff. Barbara Minerva looking disheveled, uncoordinated, not stylish, wearing glasses. So what do you guys think about all that, their interaction, the two characters? How do you like that setup? And you can include, the sexual assault scene and even in the introduction to Maxwell Lord. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in here. I didn't actually. I actually liked the scene where they showed her loneliness. I thought that was good. The introduction to Kristen Wiig, I didn't like.
Hey, wait, hold on. My loneliness.
Oh my God!
Here, I thought you had something important to say.
I know. I'm thinking he's got like this big reveal. And you're an asshole because now that song's going to be in my head. Thanks, I appreciate that.
So I actually like that scene. And then when they introduced Barbara Minerva, I as I mentioned before, I got visions of Jamie Foxx, and thankfully that didn't continue quite so badly. But that whole scene where she dropped the papers and she called out to the guy like, "Hey, Jack," or Steve, or whatever his name was, and the guy just looked at her and walked by her instead of offering to pick up the papers.
Nobody does that in real life.
Nobody does that. It's ridiculous. Nobody.
Absolutely
and
nobody.
No one can remember her name, like including the woman that just interviewed and hired her 3 days ago. Like that was lame, right? Like that's ridiculous, right? It was, again, just absurdly campy. And the rest of the movie wasn't that bad, but this is one of the scenes that stuck out poorly for me. So there was that, and then after that, I thought it recovered a little. You get Maxwell Lord coming in and introducing himself and wanting to make a donation, and taking an interest in the artifacts. So and then you get to meet him with his kid, and you start to get an understanding of his character a little bit. So I didn't mind all that, but that intro to Kristen Wiig was pretty rough. And then of course this is where you're getting the beginnings of the wishes. Diana, you can see her wishing what she wants, and Kristen Wiig and Kristen Wiig coming into her own as a confident woman, and getting the admiration and adoration of those around her.
Guys, like there was I had a little bit of an issue. So for example, like what we were talking about, how they over exaggerate like Kristen Wiig and people forget the name, and since like guys do not catcall and talk to women like. That must be a fantasy of like social media feminists. I'm sorry to say that a beautiful woman walks into a room and every single guy is like, hey, how you doing? Hey, like that doesn't
an 80s stereotype. It's a false 80s stereotype.
I work in those environments. Like I work in the hospitality industry. I'm a manager. I work in environments where you get women dressed like that around men, around drinks. Like that does not happen. Like it was it's a little bit of overkill in terms of like, I'm with the whole feminist messaging, and Wonder Woman is a feminist symbol, but that was just like you guys like chill. Like to an extent, I think
it's cartoonish exaggeration.
I feel sometimes I think it's a fantasy of feminists that every single man, like when you walk into
Calling me,
remember what Brie Larson said about to be a woman is to live on the defensive or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
It's like I think that it's a fantasy of some of these feminists. I just thought it was a bit much.
Yeah, it's certainly exaggerated. Absolutely.
But go ahead.
So,
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, how far do you want me to go with this? Because we're getting into the wishes starting to be granted. I mean, Kristen Wiig getting wish fulfilled.
Go ahead, and then Christian will take over the third act, and we'll wrap that up. Yeah.
Sure. We get to the party where Kristen Wiig is now confident. She meets Maxwell Lord. They hook up, and then Diana sees a handsome man who becomes Chris Pine, or not Chris Pine, Steve Trevor. Yeah, Chris Pine as Steve Trevor. And they have their moment together at her apartment. So is that sort of where we consider the end of the first act? In there, where are we into the second now?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the end of the first act of the movie. I think.
Yeah, I that's sort of my feeling as well. So obviously it's gotten a lot of debate. This whole Steve Trevor in this other guy's body. I don't personally have a huge problem with it. I mean, again, because the movie's so ridiculous, you don't take it seriously, so it kind of softens it in that sense. But certainly, if the roles were reversed, there'd be public outrage, right? And I think that's where you're seeing this outrage from here.
And not just that. Just to add something, I think part of the reason why some people are a little bit. So the reason why I think it's worth raising up is because Patty Jenkins and this Wonder Woman and the way she carries herself, there's a lot of moralizing, a lot of preaching, a lot of I'm saving people and it's love and I care. So it's super, super hypocritical for you to be a character that people were saying, oh, she's the best of this, she's this, she's this, she's this. And then to have this kind of creepy, terrible thing.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, Lupe.
If it was a movie that didn't even care about morals, then it wouldn't be as hypocritical. That's what I was saying. There's hypocrisy in terms of
I think
gender.
that's her arc, though. I think that's her arc because this is her flaw. This is her flaw. This is her weakness, and then she has to come to the realization later on that she has to give him up, and that she was. And it goes back to the whole truth thing, right? She has to accept and embrace the truth, and she can't. Like this is her weakness. This is her.
I would agree with you if it was addressed that, oh my goodness, I'm actually like raping this man. I'm actually like, he didn't consent to this, and I had sex with him. How horrible! Like, what have I done? I've become like the people I hated. But it's obvious.
I think that would have been more laughable than the reality.
Because the reality of it is that Patty Jenkins and them, they didn't even think about it.
Yeah. Well, wasn't this a tribute to another movie she liked, Heaven Can Wait or something?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't recall that movie well, but I mean.
Yeah, but in that movie, the character is dead. So it's still, you can say it's an issue, but it's like using a dead body. The soul's no longer dead. But in this is like a guy. It's kind of like if imagine somebody takes your wife and uses her body for sex with their.
Conveniently, this guy was single, right? So, but I mean, again,
and had no family and no friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Nobody missed him for a couple of years.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's that, and then
this movie's so terrible.
The thing too is, I mean, this is one of those moments where even my daughter at 9 years old said, "Well, why did if she wished for him to come back, why did he have to come back in somebody else's body?
Why didn't he just appear?
Why didn't he just appear? Yeah, like.
Oh my God.
I don't know. I mean, so why did you even go down that road if you didn't have to? If it wasn't because, like you said earlier, she's trying to shoehorn in a little nostalgic reference to something she enjoyed, coming up in her film fandom.
As I said, no new ideas. No new ideas.
A lot of homages to other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that. I mean, do you guys have anything to add in this first act?
No, I don't. We can go into the second act. Christian, lead us into the second act, and let's go down memory lane.
I think you guys hit it on the head. I think the stuff that worked, like in order to make the first act work as you can move into the second act, you have to accept like this is a silly movie. I hate even saying that, but it's true, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Mm-hmm.
accept that this is just a sillier movie. And as you just have to look at this and say, you know what? We're going to be saying that magic kind of solves everything. Like you guys were saying, the lasso of truth is going to be able to do A, B, C, D. We're not even going to question that. We're going to have a very Shazam level plot where it's just the wizards and the gods and everything. You just have to accept that this is reality and this is what's happening. And if you suspend that much disbelief, you can enjoy it. That doesn't make it a good movie, as you said, Lupe. That doesn't mean that we're heading into a second act that suddenly takes the movie to another level. It's just that I can still enjoy it moving forward, even with all the stupid faults that you guys just mentioned. You
Well,
guys,
to that point,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Christian.
No,
I was
no,
just
go
going to say
ahead.
to that point. I mean, it fits well with Shazam and Aquaman. I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
movie really does feel like it fits in the universe with Shazam and
Yeah.
Aquaman.
Yeah.
And like I was saying earlier, this is essentially you watch this with the seriousness and attention to detail that you would watch a Disney princess movie with, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just going in willing to accept that magic and love are going to save the day, and that in the end, people are good deep down in their souls, right? Like
Yep.
that's what you're going to hear. That's what you're going to see in this with a slightly different wrapper on it. But that's basically what this is at its core, right? And
Yeah. So
if you're okay with that, you're okay with that. If you're not, you're not. Some people, that's what they wanted and they got it, and good for them.
yeah. So you're into the second act now after the Diana raping the guy scene. You've go to Max Lord visits the Smithsonian saying he's a wealthy donor and he's coveting the Dreamstone because he wants to save his failing oil company or something like that. Or secretly, that's what he wants to do, right? And he's going in there as a wealthy donor saying, I'm going to get on the board and all this other stuff. And then during a gala, he seduces Barbara, who's taken by his charms, I guess we could say that, to gain access to her office. He wants to steal the Dreamstone. He later wishes to become the embodiment of this stone, gains the power to grant wishes while also having the ability to take whatever he desires in return. So this ability suddenly happens. The Dreamstone disappears, turns to dust. It becomes part of his body, and then by extension, he is now the Dreamstone. I want to take a quick aside here to say, fuck that. Okay, they slapped Maxwell Lord in the face in this movie from his comic counterpart. If you guys know anything about him, I'm sure Lupe knows at least a little about him. I don't know if you know anything, Paul. He is the kind of guy, he's like Kingpin in the Marvel universe. He's Machiavellian, working shit behind the scenes. He pretends to be the Justice League's friend, when in reality, he's working against them. He's saying he's recruiting people and metahumans to be part of the Justice League. In reality, he's working with this supercomputer, artificial intelligence, trying to destroy them. The guy is a beast. He has resources all across the planet. He pretends to be different people in front of other people. He manipulates world leaders. He manipulates powers. Not like this. Not using the Dreamstone. He uses his influence, his politics, and his power to do that. And he was nothing like that in this movie. In my opinion, it was an overdone, let's make fun of Donald Trump, which I'm fine with because fuck Donald Trump. But the point is why was that done? Like it weakened his character.
I'll tell you why. To be sincere, I do think that there are quite a few themes that
like
were
overtly
like,
political themes. You're saying?
Theme like political, societal themes that were quite important, poignant, had weight to them, could have been explored really well, and even like using the 80s or whatever. But I think it felt to me that this was like a 1980s kind of Lex Luthor, although he wasn't. He wasn't, but just in terms of like that businessman kind of
evil business guy.
Yeah. Yep. And the way he hammed it up felt a bit like Gene Hackman in a way. And that's what it reminded me of. It was almost like this was Patty Jenkins. That's why I say like I really don't like this movie, because I feel like she was just trying to make a Superman 78 type of movie, and Maxwell Lord was her Lex Luthor.
Well, you know who I was getting vibes of? I mean, first of all, I don't know anything about Maxwell Lord, but I was getting Tony Robbins mixed with was it Tom Vu, the guy on the yacht?
Yeah,
the yacht. I was getting Tony Robbins mixed with Tom Vu. That's what I was getting. So, and I think she was going for that too, but with a Donner-esque Lex Luthor camp style to it for sure. And I mean, I didn't have any reference of comparison for the character, so it was what it was, and I thought Pascal went 100% into it, and it worked for me in the context of the tone of the film. But I could certainly see where if you have any sort of fondness for this character in the comics, and if it's a more serious character, how this could potentially ruffle some feathers for sure.
I mean, it seems like Patty Jenkins borrowed a lot from the Rebirth storyline for this movie, but again, I use the word bastardized. It was very bastardized. I've complained about the X-Men movies doing that, but I'm okay with a character being changed for time, time period. There's story. There's reasons to change up a character a little bit, maybe to make that person more believable in our everyday world. This was just bastardization for bastardization. I did not like it. And you're right, by the way. Pedro Pascal, great. Over the top, great performance. I don't have any problems with what he did. It was the material he was working with, and I just didn't like what they did to the character. Mm-hmm. Moving forward in the second act, after this, Steve and Diana steal a fully fueled plane from the Smithsonian.
From a museum.
From a museum, and Steve now knows how to fly a jet propulsion airplane, and they go to Cairo. Max becomes a powerful and influential figure there, while leaving, a bunch of chaos and shit. He finds a way to get the two sides in Egypt walled off, so it goes back to the historical delineation lines, cuts one side off from their water, so he's breeding instability and conflict, and of course in return he gets powers, favors, all kinds of stuff. He's starting to break down.
The reason why he actually went was whoever that character was the
leading oil
the oil king
tin,
and so he wanted his oil field. So the way for him to get his oil field is that because he's a stone, he can grab whatever your wish is, then take whatever he wants from you. So he tricked the guy into wishing for, he said whatever, just a horrible.
Get the heathens out of his land, and then he took the oil in exchange, and then the guy laughed at him because he'd already sold his oil.
Yep. And in case you guys don't know, a lot of people from the Middle East are like Arabs and are really upset at the portrayal.
Well, I was gonna say that screamed bad stereotype, didn't it? I mean, that was like, ooh, that's got to be offensive.
Like I've heard that they're not happy at all. At all. It's almost as if Patty Jenkins said, "I'm going to make Wonder Woman 1984," and as we've been talking about through the
84 stereotypes,
every single trope, even to the bad storytelling from the 1980s that we saw in a lot of movies, not every, but in a lot of movies, because we feel like we've advanced so much. Action has advanced so much. We have a better, way of telling stories about these fantastical things that, there's this realism that we've added to superhero stories and fantastical stories that we're like, that could actually happen in our world because, and it seems like Patty Jenkins just said, no, I'm making a movie as if I entered a time machine, didn't have any knowledge, and made it in the 1980s, complete with offensive stereotypes.
Yep.
It's quite. I don't understand. And before we go on, we cannot not talk about the flying, the invisible jet, the way they stole it, like no security, the fact that Steve Trevor could fly it. Those
it looked like a nice, relaxing flight too, didn't it?
Yeah,
it was pretty smooth and calm.
Do you know how
he was doing rolls in the air? I mean, you got the hang of that in no time.
Those things are like the difference in terms of technology from what he flew, which basically was
the G-force. Was there any signs of G-force there at all?
Dude, like he was flying. Like these things are jet propelled. They're supersonic. They use technology that he has. He has no idea what the hell a computer is.
Nope.
And he's coming from using something that just has a rotator, that just basically has an engine that rotates, has, flaps that, go up and down.
And what's shocking is Patty Jenkins mentioned when she got the job for Rogue One, she mentioned that her father piloted an F-4 Phantom.
Yep.
She knows what she should know very well about these planes, right? It obviously didn't matter to her.
What I always say about this is two things. It's either she, unfortunately, but let put it in this context. It's either the movie was too stupid to understand that Steve Trevor could not fly that plane, or the movie thought that the audience was too stupid to notice. It's either one of those two things.
It's a movie made for kids. It's a cartoon movie made
for
kids.
So it thinks that the audience is too stupid.
And you know what?
Either too stupid or they won't care. And they're not wrong. They're not entirely wrong because a good section of the audience didn't care.
Yeah, no, but I was going to say, I'm not backing down from what I said.
No, I understand what you mean. In that vein, if I can inject one bit of positivity, it actually was a beautiful scene. I thought it was shot well.
Beautifully shot. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved the emotion of the moment and their hands joined and everything like that. I have to admit, I
It was
liked
only
all that.
missing one thing. It was missing one thing though.
Hmm.
I can show you the world.
God damn it, Jasmine. No, it was, it really, it's too bad because see, that's my issue again, as we go into the different parts, the acts of the movie, first, second, third, and I guess we're in the second, is for me, what makes the movie somewhat enjoyable were these scenes like this that were splintered throughout the movie.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about the third act later, and I actually like the Cheetah, Diana Prince fight, Wonder Woman fight, but that scene is beautiful. I think it's great.
Yeah.
The colors, them flying through the fireworks and everything about it, the joining of the two of them, and it's so great. But how the fuck is he flying that airplane? Like seriously. I mean, it's like
Just accept it. Don't question. Just accept. And they do that throughout the movie, right? And I agree with you, Christian. This was one of the memorable scenes. Like when I think of this movie, I think of it in scenes that I liked,
Yeah.
and this is one of them. Despite its ridiculousness, and they just
So-
didn't care.
so-
They didn't
so-
care, and they were counting on the audience not caring either.
right.
Paul, so do you think that we're going to get a video essay that says Patty Jenkins can only shoot scenes and not story?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not a chance. No.
So
Yeah,
I
no,
guess-
that's reserved for only one director.
Oh,
Maybe
only
two.
one.
Michael Bay as well gets a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
So
Oh, well.
moving on a little bit after that, now we're getting into what I believe is Paul's favorite scene in the movie. So after he takes the oil magnates, all of his oil, and takes his company, they're leaving on a convoy. So he takes his entire security detail with him, and Maxwell Lord's leading on a convoy. And all of a sudden, you got, they're on the road. I guess Diana and Steve steal that guy's cab, and they're driving on the road, and they see the convoy, and she attacks the convoy, and they have that little exchange where she's like, "Give me the stone," and Max is like, "I am the stone," or whatever. So whatever that is, and then you have that action scene. So you know what, Paul, I'm going to leave that to you. You like that scene? I have to admit, we broke it down a lot before. I don't know if there's any reason to really go into a
Yeah.
lot more detail with it. I really actually I kind of like the scene. It's
Yeah.
when I slowed it down and I saw the clips online later on that I was like, God, that sucked. But when I was experiencing the scene, for the cartoonish nature of it, I got to admit, I didn't mind it too
Yeah.
much.
No,
didn't mind it.
same. I thought. I mean, I won't beat it to death, but I found it an enjoyable scene on the whole, with a couple of moments of cheese. And again, we talked about the green screen when she's head on running. I mean, we saw that in the trailers. It's so bad, it's laughable. It's so bad, it must be intentional. It's on the same level as Jason Momoa in the reshoots in
It
Iceland.
is.
It's on that same
It's
level.
really bad. It's really bad. And then she tilts her head. That shit made me laugh. I was like, what was that? Like, she's running like, and then she just tilts her head to the side like, I'm like, what
Well,
are you doing?
And we
Like,
talk about the Velcro mannequin kids and
you're talking about, it's so bad.
and then
there's
the other piece was we talked about this before the movie came out. When she ripped the steering wheel off the truck and had to tell the driver
Tell the
whose
driver,
vehicle
like,
it
"No, the
is
brakes
that
work."
the brakes still work, just so the audience, and she
Just
wasn't
so
telling
the-
the driver,
exactly.
she's telling the audience, don't worry,
He's not
this
gonna
guy's
die.
okay, and she's
And-
not going to
and
hurt the bad
guys-
guys, and if he does die, it's not my fault because I told him the brakes work.
Guys, this is why I told you that I started the movie thinking it was okay, and being excited. And as these things just piled up, I was just hating the movie more and more and more. And it's things like this, which is not even. So, for example, like if you like the scene, as Paul alludes to, it has to do with taste, right?
Mhm.
You watch it with your daughter. You're a fan of Indiana Jones, and it's obviously like those. Like there's some subjectivity in it in terms of,
Yes.
no, I like goofy stuff. I like, campy, or it was fun or whatever. But then there's some stuff in it that's objective that you can look at. For example, pandering is objective. It's not about a feeling. And that was very frustrating to me. It speaks to a larger issue. It speaks to a storyteller who doesn't have their own vision, who's making a movie by committee, making a movie based on reviews from Rotten Tomatoes, based on criticisms from tweets on Twitter. It's highly disturbing, takes you out of the movie, and I just don't feel there's any place for it in storytelling. I don't care who you're writing it for, whether you're writing it for complex thinking adults or little children who are just growing up and need simpler material.
Yeah. It's too bad because I think like you said there are aspects here to really like, but especially some of it does come down to taste. But yeah, you have to look at certain things and say, hey, it was weak, no matter what. Um, we'll end off the second act with a couple of quick things. They visit the Mayan dude with the dreads, that kind of tells them that the Dreamstone was created by the god of treachery, Dolos, who, by the way, fuck them for not putting him in the movie either, because that's a huge DC character that they just completely blew off.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the thing that I didn't like
Lean into the
about
mythology.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lupe, go ahead.
exactly.
Lean
It
into
would
it.
have been like Paul asked the question like, how did Maxwell Lord know about the stone? Where did he find stone? Like during our prep when we were talking, like
Have
they
him
could have
guide that,
they could have gone more into the history and shown something, or how they went to get it from wherever. I guess in this story it's in South America, or some it's like in East Africa or something like that. And just have a more rich, more intelligent, more just better way of just tell, rather than, oh yeah, we'll go to this convenient guy that knows it in this weird place and he's in the movie for 3 seconds and then that's it.
Yeah, that's a common movie trope that I wish they didn't go for, and they did, because like you guys were joking about Michael Bay, he likes to do that in his movies sometimes. It's just the random nerd who works at some place understands how this works, and now we can defeat the Transformers because he understands it. I just wish they didn't go there. Ending the second act of this movie on Maxwell Lord, of course, cons his way to see the President of the United States, and I would like to tell you guys, for me, and then we can move to the third act, ended on, I feel, a pretty enjoyable moment. I actually liked the battle between Barbara and Diana, and of course the little mini fight with Steve in the hallways of the White House. I thought that was pretty well done. There were some stunts that I was like, Jesus Christ, and I rolled my eyes. But to me, this is when Kristen Wiig was starting to come into her own with the character. And I know she carried some confidence throughout the rest of the movie, and there was some confidence when she was learning about the stone, and she clearly did not want to give up her wish, as they learned from the Mayan dude what they needed to do. But I really liked her at this point. Now I was like, I'm really liking Kristen Wiig in this movie here, because she was going off on her own, much more enjoyable movie at this point. And I liked it. And she's beating Diana's ass all over the place, and you could see, I give Gal Gadot credit in this scene. She was a broken person at this point.
Yeah,
She's getting beaten up.
I thought her acting, this is where, like, I think that her acting has improved in my opinion. Some people may not agree with me, and maybe you can convince me with objective facts, but in terms of subjectivity and a feeling, I just felt that even though a lot of like the dialogue is just like really annoying and cringy, but in terms of conveying emotion, acting with her body, with her face, her eyes, and being believable, I thought that she's so much better than when she first started, and it was a bit of a struggle job. But I would have to disagree with you that I didn't like the action. I didn't. I actually did like the story in terms of like Barbara Minerva not wanting to give up her powers. Oh yeah, very believable. Like, who would? Like, and then Diana's like, "Oh, give up power." Like, nope, nah. This is working out for me. Like, oh, like, oh no, you're giving up the best part of you, which is like, and anybody who looks at the way the story's been framed is like, what do you mean by the best part of me? When I was the best part of me, nobody noticed me. I was, lonely and didn't have anything. I wasn't confident. I couldn't even walk in heels. So anyway, continue.
No, you got it. So if you guys want me to move into the third act, I think for me, this is where the third act begins. And Paul, you can stop me at any point if you want to mention anything in here, as well as Lupe too, both of you guys. So from there on in, now the world is starting to fall apart, right? Because Max learns that the U.S. president is using the nation's satellite system. He can broadcast signals all across the globe, and he can, quote unquote, touch the entire world. So Max uses that to go into the bunker, taps into the satellite system, broadcasts himself to the entire world, which is now completely deteriorating, right? As all these people make their wishes, they're building his health up, and he's granting. He's like, wish granted, right? And I should note that there's a little teeny scene in between there where he basically talks to Barbara, and we get another little peek into her character. What do you want to be? And it's a little strange to me that she says, I want to be an apex predator, but it's kind of like dumb wording to me, but it does fit with what she would want to be. I've been at the bottom. I now want to be at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a better. I really like the connection between being an apex predator,
Yeah.
and think about the fact that like the guy that was assaulting her, a guy who
Yeah.
assaulted, is called a
It's just
predator.
powerless.
There,
Yeah.
there's a better way to make that link between that phrase and apex. So you could talk about, for example, like go into the fact that I've like I've been ignored. Don't use the word shitted on,
Yeah.
and the kids
Yeah.
will like it. But I've been ignored. I've been downtrodden on. I've been the prey, and I'm not gonna have it anymore. I want to be a predator. I want to be at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
Something of maybe not exactly like that. I don't want to fall into the trap of doing a tell that to Zod snapped neck. But I feel like that wasn't it was I don't think it was completely terrible, because I do like that phrase, her wants to be an apex predator, but there's a way to link it to her experience, what the character is going through,
Yeah. I'm
and
done
her,
being stepped on.
yeah,
I'm done being
and
stepped
yeah, I'm done being stepped on, I'm done being the prey.
on.
I'm going to be the predator.
And it's interesting that, of course, then it turned her into the cheetah, of course. But even say I didn't think that was done that bad. It was a little wonky with the dialogue, but I didn't think it was done that bad. And then we get the final three scenes with a big one for me.
And even before you go there, Christian, can we take a
Yeah.
step back? I mean, I like that. I didn't mind the conversion, but I think Lupe makes a good point. It felt more like greed and ambition taking over, which is what they were going for. It wasn't. They weren't going for I've been downtrodden and I want revenge. They were going for I've had a taste of being something and I want to be even more. Which is fine too, I guess. But going back, I mean, we kind of glossed over the coming out of the White House, the whole realization that she has to let Steve go in the first flight scene.
I was
which I think
actually
we're both
going into
really
that next. That's what I was going to go into next. So you may as well talk about it, because I still, that scene to me is like a highlight of the movie. I just love that moment.
Yeah, I like that scene too.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah,
Steve Trevor and Diana Gal Gadot and Chris Pine, their chemistry is so easy breezy, so natural, so effervescent, so charming. Like they rhyme. Like I feel very bad for, I don't know if Chris Pine has a partner, whether it's whoever it is, or I know Gal Gadot has a husband. I feel bad for whoever it is. There's no way I'm watching that shit and like, don't come home. Just for a couple of weeks, I just don't want to. Don't come home, because their chemistry is a little bit too good. If
you flirted with her, didn't you?
Yeah,
it's
just too good. I'm not saying they're doing anything. Don't, please, anyone who's listening to this, I'm not making that accusation that they're sleeping together or they have any. No, I'm just saying that in terms of acting, it's too good, and that's a bonus, a plus, actually a plus for the movie. I'm giving them props for acting.
Paul, you could jump in. He is, by the way, I think he's dating Annabelle Wallace. So we're not saying anything, Annabelle. No, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
She's got a husband and a kid too, right? So,
But
no, I thought the scene was good. My only complaint about that scene with Steve is that he just went on the last time he screamed like "I love you" or whatever, and I'll always whatever. I thought it was unnecessary. Like I thought the scene had a nice conclusion, and then he just had to yell out one or two more lines. Like more like just.
The sound design there was quite bad. It was quite bad.
It was just like a little too much. Like you had a nice ending. She was walking away, trying to hold back her tears, and it's just then he yells out again, and I'm like, no, that was better before you yelled out. But small complaint. And then we get into her first flight scene, and I actually really liked this scene until she started doing the well, with the whole like the score is what I liked, and I liked the overlay of Steve's voice talking to her through it.
Oh, I was about I'm about to go on that. That's another of those things that's a plot contrivance. Like, really? So you're trying to tell me that the way that she learns to fly is because Steve Trevor told her one line about flying planes?
No, I don't think Paul and I.
No, I mean,
I don't think Paul and I like the scene because of that. We just like the beauty of the scene itself. Like, at least I don't want to speak for you, Paul. Like, I like the beauty of the scene itself. But yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, in the comics,
it was poetic. Again, it's one of those like. It was beautiful. It was poetic. It was with the score and the pacing of it. It was emotional. I wasn't thinking that hard about it, to be quite honest. About like, yeah, it seems a little weird that he's coaching her through it, but I mean, it's her, right?
Isn't
Like,
it? Wait,
like
it's not like that. It's like the
she's the one
invisible
doing it.
jet stuff again. It's
No,
like
I still
convenient. Like,
I
oh,
like that
just
scene.
fly. Okay, Steve Trevor, just tell that. It's like catch an error. Just feel it and go under it. And like what?
No, I felt it tied in nicely with the previous scene where they said their goodbye. He was gone. He was living in her memory and inspiring her, and I thought it was fine. What I didn't like about that scene was lassoing the clouds, and that's the one complaint I have with the lasso in this is lassoing the clouds is ridiculous. And then that whole tribute to Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner, Superman with the fist pulled back and one fist forward. It just looked bad. It looked cheesy and bad, and I was not into that at all. But other than that, I thought those two scenes, the goodbye scene with Steve Trevor and the first flight, were really good scenes overall and emotional, despite what I might consider to be minor flaws in those scenes.
And this ties into what we're going to talk next about. We get to Cheetah's reveal, and Wonder Woman coming in the Golden Eagle armor. It's like, in order for them to put things in there, they just use plot contrivances. Like, oh, guess what? So convenient that because okay, so she learned how to fly. Then what's the use of the suit? She'd gotten her power back. So what's the so why
Yeah,
why
that's
I don't think anyone's arguing these points. I think it just bothers people to different degrees. The one thing we also glossed over, though, was with the suit. I mean, they did show the armor properties, and that seemed almost like a little tribute to another Easter egg for Snyder fans. It would look like the
no,
Spartans
that wasn't an Easter
stabbing
egg.
away on her. What's
No, it
that?
wasn't an Easter egg. It was an insult.
You think that was an insult
I
this
I
time? Oh,
I
I think you're being overly
so
sensitive.
this another of those things that I say it's either one of two things, because don't forget that it's evocative of toxic masculinity. That's the commentary here. Men are evil or violent. Obviously, you have a lot of men trying to stab a woman. I mean,
Yeah.
that imagery is it's not
Yeah,
even
I get it.
subtle.
I get it. I
It's
get
not
what you're
subtle.
saying.
Then also
Yeah.
remember that the movie 300, one of the criticisms that you hear from a lot of people, I don't want to call them names or say anything about them, but I think it's just it's a misguided criticism, is that it celebrates toxic masculinity. So you have a scene where it's 100%
Yeah.
definitely 300 Spartan inspired soldiers stabbing at a woman, but she defends herself. So it's either of two things. It's either the movie is too stupid to realize that it was insulting Zack Snyder, who's a producer in the movie, who is someone who she's collaborated with before. Don't forget, she did not collaborate with him on this movie. He was just a nominal producer. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, trust me. Or the movie is stupidly insulting Zack Snyder. It's either one of those things. It cannot be. It cannot be. It's either intentional or unintentional, but it's a stupid thing to do.
I've watched that online too. I've watched people go and talk about that a little bit. And I don't want to say, I want to be very clear. I'm not going to step into that and say I have a feeling one way or another. I don't think I know enough about the background to even make that judgment. I will say one little thing. Is this even a potential? I don't know. If you guys know the history of the Golden Eagle armor, it's bastardized in the movie. But
Of course,
Patty Jenkins said numerous times at where she was pulling her inspiration from, and whether she was just repeating that from a comic guy, I don't know. But there's a Spartan side to Diana, and she embodies that when she puts the armor on. Whatever member of Themyscira wears that armor embraces that godlike battle side that they don't ever have unless they have that armor on. When they put that armor on, shit's about to go down.
Mhm.
That's why they wear the
Mhm.
armor. And I don't know if there was a connection there between the Spartans and that. Like that's the connection there. There is a Spartan side to the Themyscirans that they don't talk about a lot, because it's, the Spartans were nuts. I mean, they're crazy, so it's, I mean, they're crazy, they throw babies off a cliff and stuff like that, right? So like they were nuts.
Yeah.
But so
Even Snyder didn't. Sorry, I was just going to jump in, Christian, and say even Snyder didn't portray the the 300 Spartans as flawless.
Oh, they were flawed, and he
They were
purposely.
they were
They were.
he showed
Yeah,
both sides, the pros and the cons of their sort of traditional and unforgiving masculinity, right? I mean, he
that's why
portrayed that himself.
I'm wondering if there was something. Again, I might be looking too deep into it because I'm wondering if there was just something there because I always felt the Golden Eagle armor represented something a little bit more. When it first appeared, she wore it because she had to beat Superman, and she had to embrace that side of her that was going to make her more
but
of an animal. But
don't forget that Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman is not Amazonian
yeah,
warrior god. She's
yeah.
soccer mom. She's soccer mom. Wonder Woman mall cop. I mean, we've glossed over the fact that half of her battles she's saving enemies and protecting
Yeah.
them from falling hard and laying them on the ground softly and pushing a chair so that they land. So it's not. It has nothing to do with
You know what,
want to
Lupe?
show like
I'm not even going to lie. The thought occurred to me too. It did occur to me. I'm not even going to lie. It occurred to me. I mean, when I watched the movie, I was like, oh, like, but I don't want to make that call.
it's an
I don't.
unnecessary thing to do. And I don't know how. I now this is a conspiracy theory. This that I'm going to say is a conspiracy theory. So do not run with this and do not take it as far as I'm taking it.
Toxic. No, go ahead.
Jeff Johns was a story writer and a script writer on this. I don't know how closely he was involved in terms of doing the visuals, in terms of because you can write a story and sometimes you can detail it and say the men are dressed in this with red robes reminiscent of for example like Spartans and like 300. Sometimes some screenwriters get into that detail. Sometimes they don't. It's just men, stabbing away or whatever. Then it's up to the director to figure out the look. So I don't know, but I do know that Jeff Johns is heavily involved in this. But apart from that, Patty Jenkins took Jeff Johns on purpose and removed Zack Snyder in the creative process.
Yeah.
That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a fact. So it makes things like this. Like when I saw it, I was just like, ugh, really? Like you're gonna do it like because we all know that part of the hate that Zack Snyder gets to this day is because of the way a lot of people misinterpret works like 300 and Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna put something like that in his movie, that's a low blow. You have to be more intelligent than that. That's why I say it's either she's too stupid to realize, or she's intentionally doing that and it's a stupid thing to do. It's one of the two. There's no outside of that.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna lie and say the thought didn't occur to me because it hit me when I watched it. But I'm just saying personally, I don't want to go there. Like I can't make that call. I can't make that call. I don't think I know enough.
I'm happy to go there. I'm very happy to go there. Absolutely. And that's one thing that I enjoy about people who would listen to our content is that there's a lot of context with stuff like this that we have that you're not going to know from anywhere else because of how close we are to a lot of the people who created these things, because of how close we are to the fandom, and we understand the conversations that are had around these things. So there's a lot of context, and while I'm not saying for certain this is it in terms of, but I do have context that you can use to sort of look and at least be aware, question, and it's more context than you'll get anywhere else.
I agree. Well, let's I guess before we talk about anything else, we'll close out the movie, the final of the third act. Is there really much to even say at this point? There's I have to admit, its CGI is a little bit messed up, but I did appreciate and like the battle between Diana and between Cheetah. I liked the fact that when she chose Apex Predator, it was a cheetah. Doesn't necessarily work in a comic form, but it worked for this movie. So I think that worked, and she was strong and she was powerful. Some of the CGI was a little wonky on that, but she basically went toe to toe with Diana. I didn't like the fact that it kind of went out of her way, not to kill her, but then again, that's Diana's character. So she didn't necessarily want to kill Barbara, who she liked. She liked Barbara. I don't want to murder this woman. So, okay, that's fine. And then we end with I'm just putting my hand on my head so you guys can see context here. She can't get close to Maxwell as she's connected to the entire planet. The winds are too strong, and she uses the lasso of truth to communicate through him to all the people of the world that he's touched. We get a huge monologue, and somehow, I guess, that convinces everybody to renounce their wishes. And I don't know. I don't really know what to say at the end of this.
It's like even before we get that, like the Barbara and Cheetah fight. I know you said you liked it. I'm gonna have to say
I did.
one of we can talk deeper about this. One of the things that people are upset with about the movie is that the fights are horrible.
Yeah,
It's a lot of like clashing and hitting and punching and kicking, but you don't get that this is like, guys, don't forget there are two female characters that are regarded as the best fighters in DC. When it comes to like a sword and shield and being a warrior, there is no one in the entire DC canon that is stepping to Wonder Woman. If you talk about hand to hand, Black Canary, and then Batman is well versed in like everything. He's kind of like a jack of all trades in martial arts. But when you talk of like CQC, you don't want to fuck with Black Canary. But in terms of being a warrior, doing like flips, slashing, like combat strategy, like Diana is like a monster. You would never know from this movie, ever. Like, and it's so many, and I'm talking about like go on like, and I monitored like the chatter on Twitter and even on my Facebook. Like a lot of people are so upset with the fact that this is not a Diana that can fight. The fight choreography is uninspired. It's not clever. There are no moves that you're like, wow, damn, like that was. And if you guys remember, we had that in the first Wonder Woman movie. Let's not even talk about what Zack Snyder did in the third act of Batman v Superman, where Wonder Woman was kicking Doomsday's tail all over the island that they were like on. Like in the Wonder Woman movie, she was a skilled fighter. Don't forget that when she jumps into a room through the glass and clears a room full of soldiers and it's like flipping and breaking their guns and kicking and sliding on the ground, and
none of that. She flips the tank too. That's well done.
None of that in this movie. There's even a scene where she grabs her lasso in the Wonder Woman movie and she's like whipping people and pulling them towards them and punching them and jumping and doing kicks like Mortal Kombat, and you're just like, what is going on? She's crazy good because
but that kind of intensity wouldn't have fit here, Lupe. Like that's the thing. Like you want an entirely different movie than what this was. This didn't want to scare kids. This didn't want to shake kids with intensity.
It would have, especially in this Cheetah fight. Come on, Cheetah was like a monster and she was slashing and clawing. The fight just
by the standards of this film, this fight was fine.
Yeah,
this
but
was a fairly intense fight by the standards of this film.
I'm never talking about intensity. I'm talking about moves. Period. I could see her dodging and flipping to do stuff, and then kick her and push her back. And like the way a warrior would. She wasn't even like well coordinated more than anyone else.
When they ran up the side of the wall and she flipped her, I thought that was pretty good.
That slow motion was just like that's something that even basic Superman can do. Just grab someone by the scruff of their neck and just be like, oh, move to the side, like. And then Cheetah starts swinging, and Cheetah is swinging on the electrical wire, and it's not affecting her. And then she gets
grabbing the insulated part of the wire, not the wire.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't she grabbing? She's not grabbing the metal part of the wire.
It's too. Maybe you guys don't understand how electricity works. If you're that close to electricity, you're done, because it does conduct a little bit through the air around it. Like electricity is not a joke. You don't go through like a high tension run. Just touch the tip of it.
I agree with
that kind of detail.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think you can go into that detail. Plus, she's fucking Cheetah at that point.
Exactly, but that's my point. So she's swinging on the wire, and it's all good. She's not afraid of being electrocuted. It's definitely sparking, and everything is all good. And then it drops into the water, and then she gets electrocuted, even though she's Cheetah. And then what's so freaking annoying is that when she apologized, when she was like, oh, whatever, whether she was convincing her to do her wish or whatever, and then she says, I'm sorry. I was like, oh my God, she's gonna kill her. I was like, because it just obviously, like Paul said, in terms of like the tone, I was like, really? Like she's really gonna kill her? I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know they were gonna go there. And then she just electrocutes her. She's like, ah, she sleeps, and then she puts her on the side. I'm like, you apologize for putting her to sleep? What is going on? Oh my god, this movie's so bad. It's so horrible. It's just the worst.
And you
It's
know what? I
just
don't
the
even
worst.
think I had a serious issue with her apologizing because I actually feel that fits with Diana. Diana did not want to hurt. She didn't even want to punch Barbara. Like,
Which is
she did
absolute.
not.
Which so you're trying to, oh my, like a warrior, someone who's fighting, someone doesn't want to punch someone and says,
But
oh
she's
sorry.
not. That's not what she's
But it's
not.
her friend. She's
Yeah.
she's trying to
What do you
convince
like?
her to
It's
come
She's not
back to
just a
the.
warrior like, oh
She's
fuck
trying to
this
convince
person, I'm
her.
gonna go tear her up.
Oh no, no, no,
No,
no,
but no,
no, no, no.
she's trying to
You
convince her to
guys,
make the
you
right
guys,
choice. And then she says, "Okay,
no,
then I'm sorry,
you
but
guys are making
that
excuses.
wasn't a legit
No, it's
apology. No,
just
that
you don't
wasn't a
see it
legit
the same way.
apologize. That's a
Yeah,
I
You
give
guys,
you a
see
you
it the
chance.
guys are
same
I'm
way. It's
making.
not
sorry,
making
but you're gonna
excuses. You don't see
come
it the
on.
same way.
And the first thing is that she had been fighting with her and not apologized once, which she shouldn't. Because one thing about Diana and I, if we're talking about characters and who Diana is, this is this is someone who was raised as a warrior. She doesn't apologize for fighting. Now, yes, you may say, okay, she's not gonna kill people, but whatever. But don't forget, at this point, Cheetah is a villain, and Cheetah is trying to defeat her. One thing that Diana does is, yes, people are, oh, but Diana's compassionate. Yes, she's compassionate to good people. She's compassionate when it needs to be. But Diana has never, ever apologized for fighting. She's never been one to shy away from a fight. That is one of the things that makes a character beautiful and makes her actually a Wonder Woman. The fact, like anybody, like your mom, you guys, your mom when you were a kid, you get out of line, your mom would discipline the hell out of you. But then when it's time, she'll also make sure you don't get a boo boo, and she'll nurture you and nurse you. And the fact that they took this Wonder Woman and just made her a soccer mom, it's just it's it's I'm not surprised that it's getting a lot of backlash and a lot of hate. I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
It deserves it. Like it could be, Patty Jenkins' choice to do that, but so you reap what you sow. I'm not surprised it's getting a lot of hate in the States, and I'm one of the people that really hates it.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily arguing. I know there's people that want to defend and love it as well. That's fine as well. But I'm not saying that like my mother was Italian. My mom would beat the crap out of you if you needed to. But when I stepped out of line, my sister or my brother stepped out of line, absolutely, you're 100% right. She beat the crap out of you. But I'll tell you something else. If my mom felt that either she stepped over a line or if she felt that we did something or she needed to save us or help us, my mom would apologize. Absolutely. My
Mhm.
mom a couple of times was like, Chris, I didn't mean to go that hard on you. I'm sorry. Like, you learned your lesson, right? Yeah, I did. But I didn't need to go that hard on you. And, but next time, you know what I'm saying? So my mom did that a couple of times. I don't think my mother was a bad mother. And I think you're also
You
you're
turned out
thinking about,
okay. You
I think
turned
I
out,
turned out okay. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know, but I think I turned out right. But I think, Paul would disagree, but I think I turned out okay. Um,
Yes.
I also think that in terms of this movie, what you're saying is correct. And whether Patty Jenkins, the decision that she made is right or wrong or works for you or doesn't work for you, absolutely open to argument. I 100% agree with you. But I think for this movie, that was not BVS and that was not Wonder Woman 1 Diana. It wasn't. This Diana that we got in this movie was definitely going to say, I'm going to spare my friend and I'm pulling my punch. I am not going to put my fist through her skull and crush it. I'm going to hit her just enough to knock her out. And you know what? I do fucking feel bad for it. So my opinion is this was a little bit of a different Diana, and it had been from the beginning of the movie. This was not Snyder's Diana, and it wasn't Patty Jenkins' even first Diana, which probably goes into that conversation that we've had since the beginning of this, that does this even exist in the same universe? Or is this in the part of the multiverse that they've been talking about for the last year? We don't even necessarily know. They've played games and said it's set in the same, but I don't know, because as
Well,
much
yeah.
as there was parts of this movie I really liked, it was not that Diana. Sorry, Paul, what were you going to say?
No, no, I was going to further your point and say, like even Snyder himself said that the movies that came after Justice League are more in line with the theatrical cut. And Patty Jenkins, when she gave her sort of lukewarm endorsement of Snyder, I don't even want to say of Snyder's films because it wasn't that. When she said like she knew where Diana ended up in Justice League, so she tried not to mess with that at the end of Justice League. So she tried not to mess with that. She kept her uniform the same.
Mm,
What does that even mean? I mean, this is before
yeah.
BVS. It has nothing to do with where she ended up at the end of Justice League. Like she's just grasping at straws to try and pretend that she cares at all about what Snyder was doing with the character. This is entirely her own thing.
Yeah.
The
There's a
movie
huge
doesn't
disconnect.
in any way respect or recognize that storyline. It's
At
completely
all.
separate.
No, it
And
really
leaves
doesn't.
and it leaves it entirely up to the viewer to decide whether this is part of your canon or whether it's part of a different a verse of the multiverse. Like, it's intentionally vague on these things so that people can take what they want from it and fit it where they want to fit it. And it is what it is at this point, right? We're getting the Snyder cut. That's what matters to me. So I'm more okay with letting this exist as it is than if it was a slap in the face and this is what you get instead of the thing you loved, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, and I could
yeah,
definitely
but I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but you guys, I mean, but I look at it in terms of, wider context, because this movie is a direct reaction to all those things we heard from all those bloggers. That's why the movie.
When this was conceived, you're right, absolutely. This was conceived in the time that they were still trying to extinguish Batman v Superman from people's memories and from the continuity, right?
Yeah,
And then
that's why things like her saying "I'm sorry" just reminds me of of all the criticisms and things that people say, like, "Oh no, a hero would never do that." Zack Snyder's heroes are too this. Like, they
Yeah.
would apologize, they'll be sad. That's why it doesn't, no matter what anyone says, it doesn't feel genuine to me. It just doesn't. It's more panderific nonsense. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel real to me. It
it's
just
for a
does.
very different audience. That's it,
I don't
right?
even
It's
think
just,
I don't think it's for an audience. I just think it's dishonest.
Yeah.
That's what I
well,
like.
she, as you've said before, she's a politician and she'll say what suits her in the moment. Which is why we've seen the recent tone change, because Snyder's one of the few prominent people vocally supporting her, right? And so now she's playing nice, because this movie was coming out. But prior to that, you could see the disdain in her face when she was asked about the Snyder Cut prior to this, right? So,
Yep.
she is self-motivated and drank her own Kool-Aid with this one a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
it is what it is.
those are facts. Let's. I mean, the third act.
Yeah, we pretty much closed it out.
We
I mean, at
pretty
this
much
point.
closed it out. It's like really.
Well, the
silly.
monologue we talked about
We
earlier,
talked
right?
about the monologue. There's like the
Yeah.
long monologue. The only thing that I'll just remind people of is that. So you guys, the trick she uses where he didn't know that the lasso was on his leg.
Oh yeah, so it's just wrapped around his
Yeah,
ankle. Or
I
whatever.
didn't
Yeah.
I didn't catch that, to be honest. So you guys explained it to me. But go
So
on.
so basically, the trick is that I'm rolling my eyes just to let you guys know. The trick is that he doesn't know that the lasso of truth is around his leg.
Right.
And then she's able to talk to the people of the world and convince them to denounce their wishes, and then he also denounces wishes. It's so
We get a
goofy.
glimpse into his
Well,
background and.
Well, okay, so I saw that the lasso was around his leg, and I saw that it allowed her to project, I guess, visions to him, right, of his own childhood, and and obviously project those visions to the audience, not the people, but the audience, the viewers watching, and that's how they chose to show us his backstory and make him a sympathetic character. But you guys are suggesting, or Lupe, you're suggesting that she also used the lasso to influence the people that it was being projected to, right?
Yeah.
And that's the piece I didn't catch. And I'm still not 100% sure I buy that, because that defeats the idea that the people made the choice themselves to embrace the truth.
I don't know whether it was influence, or you can say influence in terms of her speaking to them and asking them to denounce whatever wish it was they made. It's ham-fisted, it's horrible, it doesn't make any sense. It's so convenient. I mean,
forgave a lot of the movie. This is where I was like, this is sloppy. Like, I was like, that's sloppy. I didn't. Go ahead.
No, Christian, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I totally agree with you. It was sloppy. And to that point, I just wanted to jump in and add on. The way she said truth over and over again reminded me of the way the CW Superman screams hope over and over again in a monologue.
Yeah, no. And it's not just that. It reminded me of Superman 78. And those, truth, hope, truth, hope, and the American way, or whatever, like those things that, like, what does that mean? Like, those are just words, and it's just
And the rest of the world doesn't give a
moralizing.
shit about the American way.
Exactly. Like it's not like
And
what
one of the two
actually
creators was a Canadian, and Metropolis is based on Toronto. So
what does that actually mean? Like, it's more almost like propaganda and just words. And thing I was going to say about the lasso that is interesting is that trick of the lasso on the leg is the exact same thing that Wonder Woman used on Aquaman.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say that.
Which
Yep,
which
sitting on the
reminds
lasso.
you that it was Jeff Johns that cooked up this ridiculously terrible. I do not know how Patty Jenkins reads the script from him and thinks it's any good. Like it makes me question her as a filmmaker.
Oh,
Like,
they're
how do
they're
you read this?
cinematically they are vibing, Lupe. They are. To steal a term from Jersey Shore, they're vibing hard.
They're vibing.
They got a
Like
connection, man. They're
it's horrible, but I mean, the third act is just horrible. And so we've gone over all the things that we like or didn't like about the movie and how sloppy it is, and guess I mean, so let's move on to some other things, and then we'll end. So I was quite I thought it was usual. So when the movie first had early access to social media reactions, remember that we talked about it and we said it's unanimous that it's loved, and we weren't surprised. We're like, she makes the type of movies. She's like a celebrity director. We completely expected it. When it was about to come out, the reviews were up, and it was about 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that we use Rotten Tomatoes, us, as a yardstick for what is good or not, but we're just talking about the reception. All right, so stay with us.
And
And
it's a good
then,
starting point for a conversation. So yeah.
and then the movie comes out, and then the Rotten Tomato score starts to drop.
Yep.
And then the social media like reactions of regular people start to come in, and more reviews coming, and it plummets. And right now it's sitting at a 62%. It's on the verge of being rotten, and that has not to me. I don't care about your Rotten Tomato score. What I'm just surprised about is I thought she was untouchable. I thought that not just because that Patty Jenkins she's like a celebrity director. That
you weren't the only one that thought she was untouchable, Lupe. She thought she was untouchable.
It's absolutely. If you hear her in interviews, she does sound like so, and a lot of mistakes that she's made along the way. So I was very surprised by that, and people have been ripping into this on social media.
Yeah.
Relentlessly. It's gotten like a lot of hate. So what do you guys think about the reaction to this? Like, why? Like, I really thought that because to me, the first Wonder Woman, though a good movie, has a lot of flaws that I feel a lot of critics overlooked. And I feel they overlooked it for a couple of reasons. One, Wonder Woman and the character, what the character means in terms of a symbol, in terms of the feminine power, in terms of the feminists being an icon for the feminist movement, for the LGBTQ movement, although Patty Jenkins hasn't gone there at all with this character. What it means in terms of, it's the first, like huge, big budget, blockbuster superhero female movie, a female director directing a movie that's budgeted, all these, political and societal contextual things. I felt
no straight white male critic wanted to be the
exact-
first one to
no,
give Wonder Woman a negative review.
you don't,
You just can't do it. You could not do it. It would have been career ending.
It would have been career suicide. Like you can't. So I thought that was just going to be the same thing on this one. Like it doesn't. It does because that was another thing that disappointed me with the first one. I felt like she could have dared to be edgier and go wherever she wanted to go because nobody was gonna hate the movie. They just didn't have. So to me, it's been surprising to see such a strong backlash, and I have my theories on the reasons why. A lot of them, some of them are subjective, and some of them I think are interestingly factual. I want to hear what you guys think for the reason for it. Like, why are people so so upset and like just like why I'm so like I thought I would be the only one because even when the first Wonder Woman came out, I wasn't shy about my criticisms of it, about especially the third act, pandering, rewriting, how bad the third act was, but I was like almost alone to the point where like a lot of stans hated me, and a lot of DCU fans were like, "Oh, you're too negative," and they were, trying to remove me from the fandom. It ain't gonna work, motherfuckers. So I thought that this would be a repeat of the same, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." Well, I'm Lupe. I can only tell the truth. I don't care what happens. But I thought, oh, everybody was going to be like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. And I was going to be like, no, it's not good. Instead, it's a lot of people really don't like it. So what I want to hear from you guys is why. And let's start with Paul.
I just think it's so comedically goofy that it's almost insulting, and you have to be willing to accept a very different version of the film. And then I think once the floodgates open, so first of all, when this came out, they chose very Wonder Woman, Marvel friendly reviewers, right? People that were safe, that they knew were going to give them a good review. People that buy into the hope and optimism, and they bought in, and it was getting the 90s early.
Also, not to cut you off, but to add to that, I also think that the people that first reviewed it, there was something about that early access. There was a little bit of like they were kissing ass because a lot of people get like retweets from Patty Jenkins and from Gal Gadot.
Yeah,
and
they want to be quoted. They want to be.
There was
a couple of
they did like
style reviews too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, a lot of template.
Yeah,
like the hope and the hopeful and joyful and optimistic and just what we needed. I mean, how many times did we see that? Right? It was the same review over and over again.
Yeah,
just what we needed right now in these horrible times. Brings the joy and what a wonderful experience and being a hero, all that crap, right? All the stuff they shoved down our throat with the lead up to Justice League. What we needed and this one just delivered it right from inception, whereas Justice League shoehorned it in at the end, right? I don't know. I mean, I think with one of these things, it's kind of a snowball effect too. Once a group of people finally criticize something, then it becomes okay to give your honest opinion about something because you're not the one that's going to be hung out to dry as the one person that didn't like a female-led superhero movie directed by a woman, right? Once it's normalized and okay to criticize that objectively, then all the other people that would have just said, you know what, it's great and moved on, are going to give you their honest opinion. So I think that's part of it. And to be honest, I think as much as Zack Snyder's been supportive of this, I think his association with it has made it okay for feminists who would normally support this no matter what to crap on it. Like I think in a way, yeah, I think so. Because he's so hated by some of these people that I think his vocal support of this probably tells them, hey, maybe this is something I should criticize.
But Zack Snyder has story credit on the first one.
Yeah, but I don't know. He didn't promote the first one as vocally as he did this one, though, right?
It's different. He wasn't. I don't think he was. He wasn't. For example, in the first one, he has like interviews where you can see him talking about the movie as a producer and the character and this and that.
Maybe I'm just more tuned into it now. Maybe that's all it is. But
I do think he's doing more promotion on this one because in that one, this was time during like after BVS, they'd already like exiled him and he was like struggling. The people already hated him, so he wasn't. So you are right that he's doing more publicity. He has done more publicity for this one, but his presence in terms of creating was more on the first Wonder Woman. I would assume that was more hate. Because I've not heard anyone say about Zack Snyder with this one.
Well, no, I just know he's so relentlessly hated by the people that ask for this material that maybe that emboldened them to criticize it once they got what they asked for, didn't like it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing. The other thing that crossed my mind a little bit is I haven't seen too many blue check marks attacking this one. Like they came out pretty unanimously in favor of it. I've seen more movie fans attacking it than I have check marks. There may have been a few check marks expressing disappointment or people saying, well, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. But it hasn't been that aggressive from the check marks.
But have you noticed something as well? They haven't defended it either. It's almost
no, they've gone silent.
What I see is exactly what I think is that they agree, but because they're blue check marks, they don't want to jump in because they do not want. They want Patty Jenkins to still like them because I think a lot of them are sycophants.
Well, she's on their team.
They're
politically their team, right? What they perceive to be
on social media a lot.
Right.
If you say something about the movie, she will see what you say. Like I actually have her blocked.
Oh yeah, she looks for people supporting her and
Yes.
then amplifies them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Seems like it. Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
means
for sure.
that she's also seeing people trashing it.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
She
for
won't
sure.
see, she won't
But
see
I mean,
my tweets because
that's
I have
how like Jodie's corner gets clout from her, right? Is
yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
I still can't believe she'd associate herself with that guy, but you know, he kissed her ass enough that that she was willing to prop him up, and that's the reward some of these people are looking for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's this is certainly the kind of movie where if you're not willing to accept the tone and the goofiness, and you wanted something more like the first one, it seems very reasonable to be upset by what
Well-
you got. I didn't especially care about the first one. I mean, I liked it, didn't care so much about staying true to it. So I was more willing to accept this for what it is. But I mean,
I
again,
think I'll hit you guys from a different angle. Then Lupe, you can close it out with your thoughts on it, because I know both of you guys too are very involved in the Snyder Cut movement, the fandom, and everything. So I'll give you two separate angles. The first angle is my comic book groups, and the majority of them feel like I do. We're like, you could take it or leave it. They were not necessarily turned at all by the blue check marks that came out in front at the beginning. They basically expected it. They were like, yeah, they're going to say that. And they agreed with you guys. They were like, it felt very cut and paste, very template-y, for lack of a better word. This is the movie we need right now. It's hope, hope, hope everywhere and stuff. And it was just, to them, they all felt the same way. They were more concerned with how are their characters going to be portrayed on screen, and that's what they wanted. They want that universe, and they're torn on Snyder's version, by the way. They're not, most of the guys I talk to in my comic groups are not 100% on him, and like they're really into the Snyderverse, nor are they 100% against him and think he's shit. They're very torn on it, but most of them are supporters of BVS, and they like Man of Steel, and so they've liked Wonder Woman 1. They have been very meh on this, so their reaction does not surprise me. Those guys, when you're talking about regular people on social media coming out and watching it, I am not surprised by them at all, because the way Maxwell Lord was portrayed, we talked about the ups and downs with Cheetah, and they bastardized even the God of Mischief. We don't get him. They are just like, come on. Like, there's parts that they liked, but for the most part they're like, I just like Wonder Woman 1 better. So I'm really not surprised by them. The other side of the fandom, and regular people, quote unquote, and I've talked to you guys about this before, is the MCU side. And I've seen a couple of like my Snyder mutuals turn around and be like, well, this movie should be all about them. No, look, we hated Justice League too. And I've heard a couple of the Snyder guys, they've come to me and they've been like, bro, that movie was for you. No, it wasn't. The fuck? That movie screwed up from beginning to end. We didn't like that. What's wrong with you? No, I did not like that movie. And then they're like, well, this movie was written. No, it wasn't. Like this went off a complete deep end that not even we go to. Like, I don't know what, like, what, like, now I'm accepting of that. I mean, as I said to you guys, I'm not going to lie and say I hated the movie. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed huge sections of it. But overall, I'm, like, I don't necessarily want to rewatch it. And my MCU fandom, man, they are, there's a whole chunk of them that really hate this movie. I mean, there's a bunch of them that are like me, that they're like, yeah, it's fun, it's silly, it's stupid, it's corny, and they're like, yeah, kind of run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road MCU movie, so they're in. But yeah, man, they're like, holy crap, they've really come out. A bunch of them have come out against it and said this even makes like it makes some of our movies look like they're Oscar worthy. Like they just
I agree.
hate
Like
the movie.
like you
Man.
you talk about this being like, oh, it's like a run-of-the-mill Marvel movie. I don't think so.
Yeah, you disagree,
I
huh?
think
Yeah.
most Marvel movies are better than this movie.
They disagreed with me too. They were like, a bunch of them were like, nah, bro. Like a bunch of them
Yeah.
like they were like, it's bottom of the barrel. They just don't like it.
Real. I'm talking about real bottom. Real bottom.
Yeah, some of those guys hate it. They just hate it. Sorry,
Because what I've said about Marvel movies is this. You always hear me say this. A Marvel movie, when I use the metaphor of a Marvel movie has a start, a middle, and an end, what I mean is that usually they're at least in some way like logical. You don't get all these plot contrivances or dumb things, or the plot is illogical or goofy or stupid. It might just be a generic, just bland, this happened, but like Kevin Feige tends to fine-tune plots to the point where at least it starts, it begins, and it ends. And it's like, okay, all right, that happened then. All right, let's move on. Yeah. But this movie, this is bad. This is a bad movie. This is bad.
Well, it's comparable to Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel was targeted little girls too. And it was a Disney princess movie wrapped in a superhero
Captain Marvel
skin.
had the level of like camp goofiness and bad VFX
Captain Marvel had a Nerf gun in the final fight. There was a Nerf gun shooting someone with a Nerf gun. I mean,
Yeah,
it's on
Captain
the same
Marvel
level.
special
Okay,
effects were
but
pretty
it
freaking
didn't
good.
have like bad VFX as well. And then also, I don't see Captain Marvel as, although Captain Marvel, yeah, she's superhero, she's superpowered, overpowered, wink, wink. But I like in a fight, like when I picture Diane in a fight, I don't know, but maybe it's just me. But that's also the thing about this, that why you guys see me being so passionate about it. Wonder Woman's actually my favorite female superhero,
Mm.
and one of the reasons why is because when I picture her, as I said, she's the best female fighter in the DCEU. Not hand-to-hand combat, just fighter, period. And that is something that I loved about what Zack Snyder did with her. And what Wonder Woman 1 was able to do was show that, but at the same time, show also compassion. Oh my goodness, these people are suffering. We can't walk away from them. We have to help them. You don't have to have a Wonder Woman that can't fight and is, oh, I got to make sure that you land softly and this in order to show that she's very compassionate. That is the duality that makes her Wonder Woman and not just a nun, you know. And no offense to nuns because you're also Wonder Woman, but I'm saying in this fantastical setting you get, so for me there is an element of that that's very hurtful, and that transitions into me talking about the backlash that I've seen a lot of backlash which surprised me from people who are not comic book fans, or who are not, like, they're not part of the Marvel fandoms or the DC, just regular people. And I've seen a lot of people who grew up watching the Justice League animated series,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a lot of them are upset. There's this epic thread. I'll link it to this video, as a matter of fact, and you can go and see it. And it has like thousands of likes and hundreds of replies, and it's just regular people being upset that Wonder Woman could not fight, and they're putting in clips of cartoon clips of Wonder Woman kicking ass and being like, Wonder Woman takes nothing from no one. Look at this fight of Wonder Woman versus Cheetah, Wonder Woman versus Big Barda. Wonder Woman, see how she disgraced Darkseid's demons. See how she did this to, and this is like, that shocked me because I'm like, man, these are just regular people.
Yeah.
Like, these ain't even like comic book fans, like just regular people, and they're like really upset. And they were very upset at the fact that she just was not a good fighter. Forget she was compassionate. She didn't even, and what it has to do is not the tone of the movie, it's the fact that she did not invite people who are good at storyboarding fights and making things look cool and epic. It doesn't, like, you can still have someone who's compassionate and saving people or whatever. Marvel does it very well. That's one thing that I've criticized Marvel for, in terms of, in their fight to always have them saving people. They don't do this. Like, oh, can we just get along? It's one of the things that I say is a distraction to me. Marvel is able to make fights in which their characters are quote unquote compassionate and caring for people and saving people, but they still look cool as fuck. And that's something that was missing in this. So that's one of the reasons for backlash. But another one is also, I think in this coronavirus pandemic period, people are not in a good mood. And I don't mean in a good mood in terms of, yeah, even in terms of like being pissed off and stuff like that. People are
Scared.
Pissed off,
Yeah.
scared. So if you mess up, they're not as willing to forgive you. That's why there was a time that people were getting canceled on Twitter, like a celebrity each day was getting canceled. Today it's you, and
Yeah.
then tomorrow it's your turn. If you just breathe wrong. So people are just not in the mood for that. And then also, because of how much people are struggling and there's so much pain in the world, people are not here to cuddle and take care of millionaires and people in, like, celebrities and positions of power. Like, people are just not like, this is not the time. This is not the time for it. Like, go and cry into your millions of dollars that nobody's. I saw this reaction, especially with what happened with HBO Max and the directors coming out and saying, "Oh no, they're treating us wrong," and people were just like, "Read the room.
Yeah.
We do not want to hear your crying." And this was like pretty much unanimous, apart from maybe like like cinephiles, like real nerdy people know the theatrical experience, but most people, regular people, and I was monitoring the chatter, were like, we're not trying to hear y'all millionaires in your golden, cages, gilded cages, whining about something like this. So I think that there is a sociocultural and time specific context to this that is quite interesting. Then also, as Paul alluded to, during the time of the first Wonder Woman, Patty Jenkins was a nobody. She was an underdog. People were rooting for her. Even the character of Wonder Woman being that, there was no female superhero movie, the entire thing had underdog status. Then it blew up in cinemas. Gal Gadot has become a megastar. Patty Jenkins has become a megastar as well. And if you listen to Patty Jenkins in interviews, Patty Jenkins doesn't come off very humble. She is charming, and she does know how to talk to people and stuff like that, but she comes off big-headed. I'm just gonna say it. Like, she's really full of herself. And while that's okay, there are people like that tend to that. People like Quentin Tarantino, he's also very, very big-headed. But people who are big-headed, when something happens to them like this, they tend not to get too much sympathy. And
yeah, there is that whole, you either die a hero or live long
or
enough
live long.
to yourself
Exactly.
one thing, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. Yeah,
exactly. And so Patty Jenkins is gonna need to get, like, she doesn't. I don't think she has to, like, oh, calm down or whatever. Like, be yourself, do you. But it's just the context of it. I think, like, people, like, she had underdog status, and it's just it's an American thing. It's a world culture thing. We're an underdog. People root for you when you're on top. People root for you to fall.
yeah. I mean, it's especially in the United States. You're 100% right. Look, when Tom Brady beat my team in the Super Bowl, everybody loved him because he was a 6th-round draft pick and everything. Once he got to the top of his game, he's been hated from there on out. Like, fuck him. He needs to lose. We want him out of the league. Even he could be the nicest guy. The guy could go off and probably cure cancer. Someone's still going to hate him.
I hear that he's actually, like, very nice.
That's what. I mean, apparently he's a good guy, but he's going to be hated. Yeah. Because he's at the top of his game. It's that simple. And he's going to retire as one of the greatest. Mm-hmm. So, and he's got 6 rings, so people are going to be like, fuck him. Like, that's just how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So it's sometimes, and then you're absolutely right, by the way, and then I'll shut up, to carry yourself with a certain air, Jerry Rice took no shit on the football field, but when he scored a touchdown, that man looked like he had been there before.
Yep.
He wasn't in your face dancing like an ass, whatever. Yeah, he would be in your face a little bit in the field, but when he scored, he was respectful. And after the game, shaking guys' hands. You got to carry yourself a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I have not seen Patty Jenkins carrying herself. Yeah. So it's a little easier than to be like, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Because, I mean, you can see, you look at Jerry Rice in comparison to someone like T.O. or Chad Johnson, because they were so brash. Once they started going through issues, nobody cared for him. Right. Nobody cared to even, like, look at T.O. He wasn't voted into the Hall of Fame the first time just because
of who he was.
Quite brash. Yep. Yeah. So it's context. I'm not. It's no indictment. It is what it is.
Yeah, I get
it. But let's now transition into some behind the scenes stuff. Then I want us to talk about what we want in the sequel, and also what this film, as it exists, means for the DCEU going forward. So, in terms of,
sorry, Lupe, to cut you off. This is where I have to drop off tonight, guys. So I'm going to let you carry on the conversation without me. But I'll look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about these last few topics.
All right, thank you very much for joining us, Paul. Where can people find you on Twitter as you leave out?
Yeah, as always, you can find me on Twitter at _Paul_P.
Awesome. All right. So we'll carry it from here, and we'll talk to you soon.
Peace, buddy.
See ya.
All right. Cheers. All right. Okay. So now
there were 2.
Yeah. So for this film, I think it's quite important to talk about the behind the scenes stuff, which we've been alluding to, but I think it's very important because it colors a picture for what we're going to see from a lot of these movies that are going to be coming out in the future, and a figure that is like a specter over the whole thing is the person of Jeff Johns and the role he has played in the demise of the DCEU and the state in which it is in. And I don't know how this franchise is going to recover from what he did. So basically, long story short, Zack Snyder was the de facto leader of the DCEU. He had planned out all the movies and the offshoots and what it was going to look like until the end of the saga that includes all the actors playing roles in this like current universe. There was huge backlash to Batman v Superman because he took a different tone, but the backlash was largely a media backlash, but also a backlash from Marvel fans, Marvel comic book fans. It was very loud, and so the studio got cold feet and wanted to do a correction to make the movies more like Marvel movies, because that was basically what all the complaints came down to. Make them like Marvel movies in terms of tone, in terms of style, more simplistic, less edgy, less deep, less on the deep social commentary and philosophy.
Take less chances.
Take less chances. Just be good, nice, well-behaved, 4-quadrant blockbusters. So they hired Jeff Johns to do that, and Jeff Johns came in and he aggressively went about this. And while he was doing this, what the studio and Jeff Johns forgot is that there was a very large DCEU fandom. I'm going to ask you, did you, during the I call them the BVS wars, because social media was on fire. During the BVS wars, you, as someone who is a fan of, in general, all comic book stuff, but I think you have more of a connection, at least you have more of your eye on the Marvel fans. But even in that time, just at least I'm talking about from my vantage point, I could be wrong. That's why I want to ask you. I felt like DCEU fans were drowned out, because it wasn't just Marvel fans who were piling on DCEU fans. If that was just the case, maybe it would have been a more fair fight, although Marvel fans are more than DC fans, but still.
Yeah.
But then the entire media apparatus was on the side of Marvel fans. So you have these loud platforms that, fans just can't do anything against. And at that time, DCEU fans were new to this sort of, conversation. So they weren't as coordinated, didn't know how to conduct themselves, how to amplify their voices. So did you know that there were as many DCEU fans as there are now?
At the very beginning, no. And especially when I first saw BVS, I walked out of the theater with my family and all of us enjoying that movie, saying that was a good movie. And we went to dinner and we talked about it and we liked it. And most of the fans I interacted with were like, yeah, it wasn't the greatest movie I ever saw, but they seemed to like it. They didn't have this horrible backlash to it. However, when I got more tapped into social media in the weeks that followed the movie, that's when I was noticing, like, wow, and the thing is, I will say this, and I'm being honest, most Marvel fans that I interacted with, now again, this is a personal interaction, so it's anecdotal.
No, but still, you're more tapped in than I am, so I really want to know your experience.
There was not this hatred for that movie that I'm told that I, as an MCU fan, hold for BVS. I'm told all the time, well, you guys did this. And I'm like, most Marvel fans I talk to did not have this hatred for the movie. Now, look, was it their favorite? I'm lying to you if I say it was. No, it wasn't. But they were like, hey, there's a lot of shit we liked. We really liked Ben Affleck as Batman. They seem to really enjoy the actual battle between them. The whole last 45 minutes of the movie is outstanding.
The warehouse sequence.
Oh my God, it's ripped from the pages. It's so good. So
Diana, Wonder Woman, her introduction.
And you know what, man? I've said this to you guys in the podcast how many times that I don't want to go off on a tangent, but my theater clapped when she got in. They were like, oh, like the applause happened, like people screamed. So I wasn't as involved in the wars, but I started to see them in the weeks that followed. And I think the problem was there was a subset of the Marvel fandom that went off. They absolutely did, because they were cocky as hell. They had everything on their side. And I'd never felt it was the majority, because the majority of people I interacted with weren't like that, but it was a very, very vocal minority. And they had bloggers on their side. They had influencers on their side. They absolutely had media on their side. And the spin was the movie made all this money up front, and it was front loaded. And then it made 800 some odd $1 million, which is nothing to sneeze at. And it was a failure. And that's what always confused me moving forward. So I apologize for a bit of a long-winded response.
No. We have time. We have time. We don't have a time limit.
But it was, I just really, I guess I'll say then in closing that I never felt that it was as bad as many DCU fans against Marvel fans. Like in general, yes, the world was against them, but I'm talking about just Marvel fans, because I think most Marvel fans were like, hey, that movie wasn't that bad. But you know what happened too? Once that shit took a life of its own, a bunch of those assholes that, and I'm sorry because they are, but a bunch of those buttholes that kept their mouth, like they all of a sudden started opening up and were like, yeah, that movie's crap. Like, because it was game on, right? So they smelled blood in the water and they pounced.
Yeah. I can definitely see what you mean in terms of, okay, maybe for us who were in the fight, it felt like it was like all Marvel fans. But you are right that it could have been a very vocal, aggressive, relentless minority, and the fact that they had media on the side just amplified their power.
Yeah, I can say whatever I want,
their
right? Because they're on my
authority,
side.
their power, their might, their voices, their everything. Also, and so I'll tell you what we DCEU fans thought and knew. We knew that we were very many. We knew that the number of people who loved this film were enough. Like, not just, there were enough for whatever ambitions, cinematic ambitions, financial ambitions that they had. Did we have critical acclaim? No. Was it a media blight and disgrace? And I mean, it was put on like, they were calling it the worst movie of the year, one of the worst ever, worse than like that. That's disgraceful and it's hurtful to the creators. It's not something that's, so we weren't deceitful in saying, oh, no, it looks worse than it is. The media actually kind of likes it. No, we knew that that's disgraceful. No studio wants that, but we felt that if DC had just stuck with the plan and kind of like gritted, like, just been steadfast through it, there would have been light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe they wouldn't have come to love it, but at least maybe critics will come to accept that, okay, this is what movies are like, and maybe Rotten Tomatoes scores will be more like 60s and 50s instead of the 20s that we're seeing with like BVS and then Suicide Squad, and then it seemed like that was going to be like the trend forever until.
Bro, it was definitely a snowball that just ran down a hill and just kept like you couldn't stop it at that point. The train was going, and
it really did. So for us, we felt that Warner Brothers was not looking at. They were looking at all the negative stuff, all the voices that were saying, and they were forgetting that they had a huge fan base. Whether they didn't see it somehow, maybe they don't have people who follow social media well enough, but we knew that we were there. It was just that we weren't organized. We didn't have a voice. So it was a lot of scattered voices, in the galaxy, just everywhere. And because we didn't have media amplification on our side, you couldn't see us. But obviously, along the years, with people like Fiona, with people like Chris and the RTSC account, and then more people like TPZ and different subsets within the fandom. We started to organize, and that's how you saw how successful the RTSC campaign was. It was because we were scattered ones, and then a few people, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like, I love history, and Genghis Khan and the Mongols. The Mongols were like, there were so many of them, and they were actually powerful, but until one person united them, they weren't able to do shit. But when they were united, so it repeats itself through history. If you're able to be united, you can do a lot, and we weren't. And so I'm saying this to talk about the Jeff Johns story. So when Jeff Johns came in, he did not see DCEU fans at all. Everything that he did was for MCU fans and those critics that are MCU fans that like what MCU was doing. And some of us noticed, some people didn't notice, but basically that was his demise. You don't come into a fandom and pander to the opposition or the other side or whatever is outside of the fandom for us it was very, very personal because we had been tortured by these people. This isn't even a case of, oh, it's Coke and Pepsi. This is a case of, it was a bitter rivalry because we had been insulted and attacked so much by these people that Jeff Johns was pandering to. So
Oh yeah,
Jeff Johns,
by the time I got into the social media war, it was bad. I was watching, I was
oh
like, holy
yeah,
crap, man, people are throwing bombs.
yeah, it was personal.
Yeah.
It became personal, absolutely personal. And what Jeff Johns did was he started to change the course of DC to pander to the people who had been attacking his fandom. So Wonder Woman comes out, and the third act was changed to pander more to, people who say that things were more hopeful, it shouldn't be as dark, blah, blah, blah. And the third act, which he corrected, quote unquote, altered, was the worst part of the movie. It's the part that people cite as this is not good. The movie's great except this part. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very weird that Patty Jenkins then takes Jeff Johns, who is responsible for the third of the movie that's bad, and Zack Snyder, who's responsible for the first two parts of the movie that are good. She kicks him off. But the reason why she kicked him off is because that was a time when Zack Snyder's power, quote unquote, in terms of his influence,
I'd say it's influence
had been diminished.
Yeah.
Like so much. Like he wasn't even on Twitter anymore because the negativity and the shame and the hate and the disgrace had become so much that he went to Vero, where it's a lot more peaceful for him. His fans congregate on there. He can think with a clear head. That sort of thing. Like, so his power. This is someone who he was the king of DC films, and then goes from that to being a pariah, quite actually. And so Patty Jenkins made a strategic move not to stick with him, which is always a sore in a personal spot for me as a fan. So you can see how all these personal things intertwine.
Yeah.
People doing things to support people who had tortured us. It's personal. There's no way you can separate that. But I do try to look at things objectively. I do hold myself to a very high standard. I always say this: if Zack Snyder does stuff that I don't like, I will say so. I always tell people. So, for example, like Zack Snyder has been doing publicity for this Wonder Woman film, and I don't like the film. Mm-hmm. And spoiler alert: I told Zack that I don't like the film.
And you know what? I think that's important, though. Like, it's very difficult for any of us to take our emotions out of any situation, and we're all guided by that. But I think there's something that's very true about doing what you're doing. It's, if I had a relationship with a guy, and I don't, but if I did, I would hope that after my initial star freak out starts to go away, right? So after I'm initially like, whoa, I'm meeting a star, after that disappears and I actually get into a conversation with him, that I'd be able to truthfully say, I really enjoyed this or this because it touched my life. I really didn't like this or this. And I would hope I'd be able to do that. I don't know.
You have to be able to like a lot of people don't understand. Like, I've been around a lot of celebrities, not a lot, like roll with celebrities. Yeah. I grew up playing basketball. I actually was quite good, so I've been around a lot of like NBA players and stuff like that, just in terms of like training camps or scrimmages and stuff like that. I've been around of like my cousin's a musician, so I've been around of, and they're just normal people. So when I see people stand what you quote unquote stand behavior, people who are celebrities do not respect that.
Yeah.
That's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. You are an essential tool for them to use in terms of their fame, their fortune. They appreciate that and they will nurture that, but they don't respect it. Because at the end of the day, you are also a human being.
Right.
They are not better than you. You should not forget your mind and your own feelings and your own pride in who you are as a human being for any other human in the world. These are some of the things that my dad taught me, but it's also things I've experienced. I've seen, you know, people who are like celebrities laugh when fans freak out around them.
Yeah.
Not,
No,
not, not. They won't laugh in their face, but when they leave, say things like "that was weird." You
Yeah,
know.
I mean, it's for my job, I have to work with a lot of political leaders. So I have to work with the governors in our tri-state area here in New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, and there's a couple of other our senators and everything. And they carry themselves a certain way, that.
Mhm.
But if you got to be able to interact with them as human beings and talk about freaking football and stuff like that, you got to be able to do that because I can't do my job unless I'm able to do that.
And
But I
and
do know
if
a
you,
lot of
and if
people.
they
Yeah.
notice that you're starstruck, their respect for you just goes
Oh, it
down
drops.
immediately.
It drops.
It
Yeah.
drops immediately.
Yep.
And so I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, that you know, they have to like Wonder Woman because now Zack Snyder supports it. So what is
Yeah, I got you.
it?
Yep,
And
I
it's
got you.
like it doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
Just because Zack Snyder likes something or is publicly like saying something is great does not mean that what you feel in your heart and what you know about it is not true. If you
Right.
disagree with him, you disagree with it. For example, you and I disagree on a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't make me dislike you, does not make
Right.
you dislike me.
No,
It's
likewise.
it's
Absolutely.
exactly it's
Absolutely.
it's no different from that. Zack Snyder likes it, or he supports it, or he's happy about it, or for example, like someone had the conversation. I had the conversation that Patty Jenkins basically betrayed Zack Snyder because Zack Snyder was the one that brought her into DC, and someone was telling me that but Zack Snyder supports the film, so you look silly, and he was like insulting me, and I was like,
Mhm.
that has nothing to do with
Right.
my opinions on what she did. So, for example, let's talk about like you, Christian. If we had a friend and somebody maybe like did something bad to you, I can say,
Mhm.
oh, that person did something bad to you. But if you're like, oh, but I'm friends with the person, and I have the right to say, I don't like that person for what they
Mhm.
did to you.
Mhm.
What's the
Yeah.
end of story?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we disagree on that. It's like, oh no, I've forgiven them or I've moved on or
Mhm.
oh, I'm just gonna help them. And say like, nope, like they did that to you, and I will not forgive them for that until they apologize for it and really make amends. And I don't think they have that sort of thing. There's
Yeah.
no like just because Zack Snyder says something does not mean I'm just gonna be like, I don't like it, but Zack Snyder said it's good, so it's all good.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple people do that, and and trust me, I understand how personal the fandom can be, and I'm fans of certain things that are that personal with musicians, for instance. But you have to separate that. You have to like just because my favorite musician supports ABC or supports a political party, let's say, I'm suddenly gonna no. I can still disagree with that individual.
Mm-hmm,
We are allowed to have that disagreement.
mm-hmm.
In fact, I think that's healthy. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I can hear people, who say, "Oh, the reason why you say that is because you're a Zack Snyder stan." One what I just said shows that I hope that shows you that I'm not a stan. But even if you say that, oh, the reason why you don't like Wonder Woman is because you have because you're a Zack Snyder stan.
Right. Right.
Well, I like Birds of Prey, and Birds of Prey is a movie that's made under the regime that is anti-Zack Snyder.
Right. Right.
And you've heard me and Paul argue about Birds of Prey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
defend, and I actually defend the movie, and yet I understand that it's a creation of the Jeff Johns era, and it's created by people who did not like Zack Snyder's style, wanted something in a different style, and are part of the people that usurped him and made all that stuff happen. But I still
Hmm.
say I watched the movie, and for what it was going for, I actually liked it. It did this. So I hold myself to a high standard to be able to separate my personal feelings
Hmm.
from the objective quality of something. I can still talk about the context that surrounds it and say that it's messed up that they're
Right.
doing this because of that, but the movie itself is good or what have you.
Hmm.
And with Wonder Woman, I don't want anybody to think that, oh, it's just because of this. No, Wonder Woman is an objectively bad movie.
Hmm.
And I objectively feel it's bad regardless of who made it. Like, I don't
Hmm.
care if it's a superhero movie or if it's made by Patty Jenkins or made by
Yeah.
my mom. If my mom made this, I will be like, hey, mom,
Man, you fucked
like,
up.
this ain't it. This ain't it. Like, mom, like, hopefully she would have shown me pages or something so I'd be able to correct her and be like, nah, this ain't it. But basically this behind the scenes stuff, colors, a picture in which so Patty Jenkins basically took Jeff Johns' side in this, you know, um in this
Oh, she
debate or
definitely
this
seems to.
feature,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and now Jeff Johns has basically been disgraced.
Yep,
Everything he tried to do with Justice League blew up in his face.
yep.
And again, what he's tried to do with Wonder Woman 1984 has blown up in his face. And ironically, the best parts of the first Wonder Woman were by Zack Snyder. And now we're also getting the Snyder cut coming up. So karma is a funny thing. And now Patty Jenkins is in the position where going forward, they've announced that there's going to be a Wonder Woman 3 and she's directing
Yeah,
it. Gal Gadot
yeah.
is turning in. She cannot go down the same path that she did. She
I don't think
cannot
she can.
rehire. Yeah, she cannot rehire Jeff
Yeah,
Johns.
I don't think she can.
Cannot take the same tone. She can't do the same thing to get the same result. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna go back to Zack Snyder, what does that mean? What do you think in a sequel that comes? What do you think? What do you want to see? What changes do you think that she should make to give her some success and even if it's not success, just like what are your
Mhm.
feelings about the sequel?
Well, I think it definitely was. It should be a wake up call because this was not universally loved. Whether Paul and I are a little softer on this movie than you are is not our conversation today. As we start coming to a close soon, tells you that this is still an extremely divisive movie. That it's just not universally loved. So
Hmm.
whatever, I understand every movie's not going to be universally loved, but you know what I mean when I say
Hmm.
that. It's just it's definitely gotten more hate than she probably expected it to
Yeah.
get. And more hate by, you were saying earlier, regular moviegoers too, that just were
Hmm.
like, sorry, this movie sucks. They're not into it. So they have to rethink no matter what, because I don't think you can look at this movie and say this is a triumph moving
It
forward.
doesn't
And they,
even have a strong fandom.
right,
Like like
right.
when BVS came out, there were a lot of people like aggressively
Yeah. Yeah.
defending it.
Absolutely.
I've
Absolutely.
not seen anyone aggressively defending this movie. I've seen a lot of people who are quiet, who are
Hmm.
just like, you know what? I enjoyed it. I don't know why you guys are fighting. It's not, and people just
Hmm.
being quiet. But I've seen a lot of people aggressively hating on it, and that is an issue.
Yeah, and I
Sign of
have seen some
thing.
people pushing, but none of them are like quote unquote influencers like blue checks and everything. I've seen random Twitter users, random Facebook users, stuff just being like, yeah, you know what, I really did love it. Like
Mhm.
but I don't see people that are in quote unquote any sort of position really making that push. So I'll give it two ways, from a business perspective and then what I personally would like. I think from a business perspective, and I mean this in no disrespect anyway, I think some of the future might depend on what happens with the reaction to the Snyder cut and a potential of a Snyderverse being continued moving forward.
Mm, mhm,
If
mm,
all of a sudden that gets big and it's more than just this kind of like pop culture thing that people are putting it into right now, because obviously there's people that are waiting to hate watch it and there's people that
mhm,
are waiting to love watch it,
mhm,
so we got to wait for the reaction. If the reaction is really good and fans are on top of this thing, because I'm now talking to Marvel fans that are like, bro, I want to see this goddamn thing. If that's where it is, then I think all of a sudden the door could potentially open for Patty to come around and say, you know what, can you join me again and maybe we can collaborate here and we get parts of what Diana was back into the next movie. So I think that I'm just thinking about it from a business perspective.
mm, mm,
That's a
No,
possibility.
no, I didn't think about it from that angle. You're right.
Now from a personal perspective, again, I'll repeat, a little softer on this movie than you were, but it was nowhere close to the first movie for me. I
Mhm,
thought the first movie was heads and tails better. And one of the things that you can dislike Snyder movies if you want to, and many people do, but dislike them for the right reasons. Um, One of the things that you always got to give him is from Man of Steel through BVS, and then you watch what his plan was going to be for the rest of the DCEU. There was continuity, there was a cohesive storyline, and he actually, in his mind, probably had an end thought
mhm,
out as well. And when they decided to blow this thing up and do the proverbial, I've been turned into a meme now, chuck shit against the wall, right? So when they
mhm,
decided to do that, they lost that.
mhm,
And that's what I would like to see. I know they're going with the multiverse now. I get that. But with that, everything is this scatter shot, pump the shotgun approach and just shoot. And that's where they're going. I don't like that. Blast the
Mhm.
MCU, but there's a continuity there.
Absolutely.
Just what happened in the previous, and it's not a perfect continuity. We could watch all 22 movies and rip it apart if we
It
want to, but
it's like that. Like if you, it's anything that's not a continuity is nitpick. Like they've done. Like
yeah,
I always say it. Kevin
you're
Feige
nitpicking.
has done an amazing job with creating that cinematic universe. Like I
And
don't care what you think about the story, whether you like that, blah blah blah. The
right,
job that he has done with creating a cohesive cinematic, like it's exactly what we love about comic books. This is
yes,
why, like,
yes,
and it's so crazy that the first people to do the epic crossover was DC, but
right,
then they're
right.
abandoning it and leaving it to only be done by Marvel and things like Marvel doesn't have a trademark or a copyright on cinematic
No,
universes.
no, absolutely not. And I understand the argument that not everything has to be a cinematic. Of course, that not everything needs to be a cinematic universe. I get that,
I
but
understand that too.
yeah, I'm totally with them. But with this, for instance, you have the same actress playing the character, right? So what I would want to see moving forward, you got the same actress playing the character. This movie, we just talked about it. I'm fine with it existing as this kind of standalone thing, and this version of Diana is doing whatever she does in Wonder Woman 84. But it's so disconnected from BVS and Wonder Woman 1. That's what I would like to see. Where's the growth of this character? How did she become the person that walked away from humanity? Or what is she becoming after Zack Snyder's Justice League? What's happening with that character now moving forward? Fine, this was a fun side mission, but there's only so many of these fun side missions that I want to see. And that's what Snyder brought to the table. Even if another director was going to take over the helm of the next movie, you had the Kevin Feige behind the scenes, right? You had the Zack
Mm-hmm,
Snyder behind the scenes.
mm-hmm.
And I want that back. That's what I want. I don't like the scatter shot. It does bother me. I don't like that
And
scatter shot.
and look, objectively, let me tell people the reason why cinematic universes are great and why it works so well in comics for us that read comics, and why
Mhm.
it's worked so well as hyper focused as it is in the MC. Because in comics we know it's a little bit looser,
Yeah.
but still,
Yeah.
it's because it makes the story you're telling much more epic, no
Yeah.
matter how small it is, because you have two things. You're coming in with an expectation and you're leaving with an anticipation. So the expectation you're coming with is everything that's happened before it.
Hmm.
Every
Hmm.
single thing. That entire universe, there's an entire universe of stories and characters and backstories that you're invested in that connect to this
Right.
in some way. Whatever way it is, whether they're in the background, whether it's one character that makes a cameo that's in the foreground, you're bringing that, or whether this is a sequel, you're bringing that. So it instantly makes this a
Yeah.
richer, more dramatic, more complex
Yes.
story, no
Yes.
matter how simple it is. Then after that, you're leaving with anticipation because it's connecting back again to future stories.
Hmm.
So no matter what you do, it's making whatever you're doing even more heightened. And when you don't do that, when the potential is there, you're missing out on so much more. And the thing that a filmmaker will say is that, oh no, they just wanted to tell their own story, it's claustrophobic. I
Mm.
think that's a I don't think that's a great excuse, because I think that there is room within these cinematic universes to still tell very creative stories.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that the reason, because I always have this criticism of Marvel and I say they're generic, blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're like generic because it's in a cinematic universe, so it's locked in there. I think that even within the confines of the bigger MCU story, you can still, for example, look at what they're going to do with WandaVision.
Hmm.
That's an
Hmm.
example of something. It's within the cinematic universe, but it's still something that's going to be quite risky, quite, off center, very creative,
Yeah. It looks wacky.
adventurous, like
Yep.
wacky, like nothing that we've seen before, bringing all these weird elements and just throwing them in like a gumbo pot of something just, incredibly different. Or something like The Winter Soldier, that's
Hmm.
like a spy movie, but it's also within the MCU. So that excuse that some, they give, oh, there's no creative freedom within the. I don't think so. You can, for example, in the MCU, I can if they give me a character and I'm like, I want to tell a grounded story where there's like no superpowers or whatever, blah blah blah. You can do it. For example, look at Logan.
Mm-hmm.
Logan
Mm-hmm.
is in it's in the X-Men cinematic universe, but they managed to tell a story that was very, very grounded. You can do that.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
example, if I had a character like Doctor Strange, I would make like a a super horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might not be R-rated, and for example, it doesn't have to be. Don't forget The Conjuring is
Yep.
PG-13.
Yep. And
You
there,
know,
I like the
so
Conjuring.
that excuse is just not valid. It just
Mm-hmm.
isn't. So the fact that they're not doing the cinematic universe, and the reason why they're not doing it is because there was a lot of criticism from Marvel sort of bloggers
Mm-hmm.
that they were rushing to do a cinematic universe and copy Marvel, and it was not a valid criticism because, as we've said, they do not. Marvel does not have a copyright on cinematic universes.
No.
Anyone can
No.
copy. Anyone can do whatever they want to do. Let them tell a story. Don't be like, oh, Marvel is the only one that can do it. You guys just do one-offs because you're not Marvel. What?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so also with the way that they splintered off, and them trying to break away from what Zack Snyder did is what broke the universe to the point that they're like, man, going forward, the only thing that we can do is, But I think that the solution that they need to do is that I think Zack Snyder can come back and
Mm-hmm.
continue his Snyderverse, and then you can still have one of satellite movies and one of trilogies. For example, like the Batman from Reeves can just do its own thing,
It could just
and
exist.
it
Yeah.
can just
It could just
exist.
exist. Yep. Yep.
There are other things like that can just exist. But for example, like other things can be like, all right, these are available for this cinematic universe. I feel like things like Black Adam, like Shazam, can still be in the Snyder. I still feel that Shazam can be in the Snyderverse. The only
I
problem
think
is
it
that
can.
it was created by Jeff Johns. So
Yeah.
only if they really move him out and his influence is not there, because he's a spiteful person. And the reason why he did all these things is because he went to erase Zack Snyder's legacy. Um, Although I don't really like Zachary Levi as an actor, I can still see he and Black Adam can be characters that can still pop up. And I know that if Zack Snyder is able to take them on, he will do a good job, in his own films to make them fit with his own tone, maybe change their costume. And then in their solo movies, they can have the freedom to do more of what they want to do. I still think that they can do it.
The future of the DCEU is in a much more interesting place since you and I talked about with Paul too, the future of HBO Max, and then we talked
Mhm.
about the theatrical releases and everything. Because if they are 100% all in, and that's a big if, but if they're 100% all in on the multiverse theory, they absolutely can have a functioning, fleshed out Snyderverse, CW verse, whatever the hell you want to call the DCEU verse, and you will suddenly go from scattershot approach to focused approach, and all of these things are now canon. They
Mhm.
exist simultaneously. You're making multiple parts of the fandom happy. And the only issue I would have is like Gal Gadot. Let's say Gal Gadot is playing Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. If that's the case, then I just think you want to be a little careful borrowing those actors and having them move into these crazy versions of their characters. Like I kind of feel like she really should be more the Wonder Woman Part One / BVS version or Zack Snyder's Justice League version of Diana. Pick a different Wonder Woman then if you want to go more Wonder Woman 84. Pick a different actor because.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think it's the same. It's gonna, Marvel's gonna run into that problem when you want to recast Wolverine at some point in the future.
Mhm.
They already have Hugh Jackman ingrained in their skull. So that new version of Wolverine is going to have to be very different than the version of Wolverine that we got in the Fox universe for the
Mhm.
last 17 years. So
Mhm.
I think you can make this work, but I don't think like let's say Ben Affleck Batman, like Batfleck should not suddenly he could jump in and out of a universe, but his movie should clearly exist in that.
Mhm.
It should be
Yes,
known that
absolutely.
that version is from Snyder's
Right.
universe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also gives rooms, for example, like what they're doing with the Flash with like universe hopping,
Right. Right.
dimension hopping, not universe hopping. That's another element that they always have up their sleeve in
Absolutely.
the future. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that this has been a very robust discussion. The crazy thing, the sequel that they've announced,
Yeah.
well, good luck because it's not going to come out probably before 2005. from what I see, because on
get
Patty
it.
Jenkins' table, she has Rogue Squadron coming out. So
Yeah.
if she begins filming that immediately, and she's like super fast on it,
Yeah.
it takes like what, like a year and a half, and it takes like 2 years to get a movie out. Let's
Yeah. I
just say
mean, you're
just
thinking
standard
what,
time. Yeah,
2023? I mean,
yeah.
minimum.
So it'll be out 2023. Then she will start working
Yeah.
on so another 2 years for, so maybe 2024 if she's fast. But then also, even before this sequel was announced, she and Gal Gadot have that Cleopatra movie.
Yes. Yes.
So
Right.
that's another movie that she's contracted to make with
Yeah.
Paramount.
Yeah.
So I
A
don't
lot could
know.
happen, man.
I don't know where the space for Wonder Woman 3 is, honestly. I don't know. I think obviously they put that out to try to buffer all the negative backlash and
See if they can
show
give 84 a boost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to give 84 a boost, show we're confident about it. So, but I think that personally I would like another director to direct Wonder Woman 3. And it's nothing personal.
Uh-huh.
I don't think that Patty Jenkins has any new ideas. I think that this movie is truly her taste. I don't think it was like an influence from Jeff Johns. In a lot of things she said in a lot of interviews, she's a big fan of Richard Donner's Superman and
Mhm.
that 70s campy, goofy era of movies, all the Spielberg movies and the kid movies like the Goonies and Indiana Jones and Superman,
That's
that era.
I interrupted you and I apologize. That's a good point. I mentioned recently that my wife and I, it's going to take us a little while because we're watching other stuff in between, but we started a DC movie rewatch. And we
I heard
started
that.
with yeah. And we started with Superman 78. We're going to go all the way through, I guess, a rewatch of Wonder Woman 84 at some point.
Mhm.
But we're going through, and yeah, you can see, because we just got through the first Superman movies, the first four,
Mhm.
and you can see the similarities and the
Yep,
homages, if you will,
yep,
from Patty Jenkins in
yep.
here. I
It,
mentioned Superman 3, the opening. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely,
It's what
definitely.
it's what she likes, but unfortunately, it's just modern audiences don't like that style. They
Yeah,
like their, and especially for DC heroes, they like their heroes darker with more realism, more dramatic, more modern
godlike.
storytelling elements, and more modern action. We've made so many strides,
So
and
many. Yes.
nostalgia is a very powerful drug, but
Mhm.
people are not that intoxicated at the moment. So personally, I don't think she should come back. I also think that Wonder Woman as a franchise can be a good vehicle to to um to give female filmmakers a big boost, for their
Yeah.
career. Just like it's done for Patty Jenkins. I feel another, up and coming female director, or one that's been around but hasn't done something like this, should come in,
Mhm.
make a couple, and then yield to someone else. I don't think that the character necessarily belongs to anyone. And
Wow.
personally, I don't like what she's done with this movie and the first act of the first one. So obviously, I'm a little bit biased to it, but I genuinely, objectively feel that she doesn't have any new ideas, and then subjectively, good ideas. Every single thing that she did in this movie was an homage to something else.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in this movie, and whether you like the movie or not, and I've mentioned there's parts I enjoy, you could see it. From the opening scene with them all, we talked about the chase scene, moving all the way to the end, talking about truth and her speech and everything. There were a lot of homages here to what came before, and I was a little torn on, is that because of what the writers brought to the table, or is that because of what Patty really pushed? And if it's what Patty really pushed, and you're going to get more of that in part three, that's where I personally have my questions on
Yeah.
how that could
Oh,
go.
she
Yeah,
pushed it. She
yeah,
she pushed it. There's also a scene in the first Wonder Woman. You remember, like, where she homages Clark Kent snatching the bullet
yes,
before it hits.
yes,
Like,
yep,
she is like, and it made me come to the realization that I don't think she likes Wonder Woman. I of course she likes Wonder Woman,
mhm,
but I mean I don't think she loves the character, because I felt that in this movie she tried to make Wonder Woman Superman. And she had Richard Don,
yeah,
and not just
yeah,
Superman. Richard Donner.
Richard Donner Superman. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
to me, like, and that's what hurts me and what gets to. I love Wonder Woman as a character. I feel that she doesn't. I mean, there are iterations where she flies, and we've seen it all over media. I don't feel she needs to fly like Superman. I
Right.
don't feel she needs to wear a cape like Superman. I feel she's badass on her own with her lasso, her sword, her shield. She's a Greek goddess. Like the elements that make Wonder Woman to me are enough for
Hmm.
her to be
Hmm.
like a peak hero. You don't need to have Superman envy, just
No.
like people say, Superman doesn't need to have Batman envy.
Right.
Batman doesn't need to have Superman envy. Like
Right.
these characters, like focus on it. If you want to make a Superman movie, go for it. But I don't want her to make a Superman movie either, because we know that she's just gonna make a Richard Donner Superman movie. Please don't let her near that character either.
I'd
But
rather see her stay away from Superman.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
but I would be okay. We heard directing another DC, character. Absolutely, that would be cool. Just love the character and make the character. Enough with these homages and
Yeah.
but that's been a brilliant conversation. Thank you very much for hanging with us for 2.5 hours.
Holy shit! It's as long as the movie.
Yeah, it was exactly, it was as long as the movie. I don't know how you consume this, whether you watched it, whether you listened, in bites or you binged the entire thing. But we thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
let us know if you got to the end and leave us an emoji of what should we do that's like Wonder Woman. Okay, an emoji of an eagle.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah,
good
I
one.
like the eagle.
All right,
Yeah, the
an
eagle emoji.
eagle. If
Yep.
an eagle, let us know that you got to the end. Converse with us. We really appreciate you. So, Christian, say your goodbyes to the people, and let's be out.
I think this is the final one for 2020. So happy New Year, everybody, and we'll see you in 2021 with our hopefully back and better than ever. Right.
Absolutely, yes. And in early in the year, we're gonna drop our top 10 films of 2020,
Yes.
the little retrospective, and then for our sort of like Happy New Year period of the year, we're going to do our top 10 most anticipated films of 2021. So
Hmm.
look out for those. They're going to be like really cool, really fun. I've been compiling my lists and secrets, and I can't wait to share it. So, as usual, I've been yours truly, Lupe. You can catch me on Twitter at LiveLoveLupe, and you can catch me if you can on Vero at LiveLoveLupe as well. We have been your Film Exiles. Remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, stay exiled.